Salutations, Legion of Doom. Welcome to Podcast of the Storm, where social awkward outcasts, crazy weirdos, and all-around nerds convene to talk and debate all things pop culture. With me, as always, is my co-host, the nerdy occultist, aka the authenticator, Dalton L. Mortimer.
Good evening, folks. Sorry about the channel icon there. Apparently, Brainstormer is having trouble seeing me, and I don't know if that applies to you guys or not. But because from my end it looks fine, but apparently Brainstormer said he couldn't see me when I had my camera on. So for now, the icon will have to substitute because technical difficulties. Is it any different now, by the way, Brainstormer?
No, it still looks like TV static.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. That's super weird. Yeah. Anyway,
so, going with the classic icon today, I guess.
Yeah. So we're online. We're still technically playing catch up from last week with trailers and stuff we missed.
But also, in case anyone missed it, there was a massive trailer that got released in the last week. So yes, we'll be also covering that.
Yay.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have a couple articles to cover. Like, first off, both were sent by Dalton. So this is the New York Post.com. It's by Johnny Orleskini. If I said the name wrong, I'm sorry. It's published November 4th, 2021. Please kill the Marvel Cinematic Universe before it's too late.
You guys are well aware of how I feel every time somebody dumps all over the comic book genre, so I expect this one will be honestly a mixed bag, if anything, because the MCU has been teetering on the edge of bad for a little bit, and let's not even talk about Eternals.
Actually, that reminds me. Did we ever really do a review of Eternals?
I don't think we did.
Shit. Yeah, that's a thing for next week. We're gonna do a review of Eternals next week, folks. That's common.
And I expect it will mostly be not nice, at least on my end.
I feel like I have to go watch it again, just so I have it fresh in my mind.
Yeah. My condolences.
I know that would be a waste of money and all. It's just I watched it like over two or so weeks ago. Like, some things I remember, but I want to at least have a second viewing to be able to look at it with a more critical eye.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's a thing for next week. We'll review Eternals. Like, I think we said we would do it.
Yeah, so it'll get reviewed, and I've already given my thoughts on it a couple of times on Comics Division's channel, and then on I Love Puppets. I gave a review. So yeah, let's have a third crack at this.
Yeah.
Leviathan here.
In the 2002 film Spiderman, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben told his nephew, with great power comes great responsibility. What he did not dramatically say was, with great power comes more than 30 films. Okay, well, that's just a pretentious way to start off an article.
That was like, there's 1,000 better ways you could have said basically what you're trying to say there.
Okay.
I would have gone with great power comes great responsibility, and therefore, since Marvel has such an impact on the movie industry, that means they have a responsibility to how it is shaped.
Right.
That would have been a more intellectually honest way of saying what you're trying to say there, I think.
Okay. Moving on.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, but that unfortunately is Maniac. But that unfortunately is Maniac, Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige's misguided interpretation of the comic book wisdom. The fuck?
Yeah, I read that again because I'm pretty sure the point got lost on me. What the hell?
Yeah. Okay. But that unfortunately is
No. It's start the part before that because I completely missed out on the context there.
Okay. So in the 2002 film Spiderman, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben told his nephew, "With great power comes great responsibility." What he did not dramatically say was, "With great power comes more than 30 films." But that, unfortunately, is. I don't know if that's manic or maniac.
Either way, it doesn't really make any fucking sense.
All right, let me finish that sentence then.
Right.
But that, unfortunately, is manic. Marvel Studios head, manic or maniac. I'm not entirely sure. Hold on,
Either way, it's incredibly like dismissive ad hominem bullshit.
Right. Okay. So, but that unfortunately is maniac. Marvel Studios head Kevin Feige's misguided interpretation of the comic book wisdom.
That doesn't follow at all. Like I said, a more intellectually honest way of saying what you're trying to say there is, with great power comes great responsibility, and therefore Marvel has a responsibility for how they impact the film industry. That would have been a salient point. But somehow comparing the number of movies to Marvel somehow did what the fuck? Okay, yeah, I'm gonna try to explain to you how stupid this is. James Bond, okay, has been around since the 60s. And in the course of James Bond, there have been more than 50 films. Would you, in all earnestness, sit here and tell me that there have been too many James Bond movies because there have been more than 50 of them? Or does James Bond magically not have to abide by the same rules because you're not in the business of blanketly dismissing it like a motherfucker? Even though the initial premise of James Bond was an adaptation of pulp novels, which are basically the ancient precursors to comics, written by Ian Fleming deliberately as a pulp spy novel. So, in other words, what I'm getting at is James Bond, over 50 films. Nobody bats an eye. Marvel manages roughly 30 films in the space of about 20 years, and everyone loses their fucking minds.
Okay, so it
For some
is.
reason.
Sorry, the word was maniac. I just need to check because I don't use that word often, and
Right, okay. So apparently the success that Kevin Feige had is somehow a breach of the responsibility of his power, which makes no fucking sense at all. Um, if you wanted to make a point about how Kevin Feige is being irresponsible with his power, you would have said something like, and the Marvel Cinematic Universe has um a disproportionate effect on how Hollywood shapes itself, and therefore he has a higher burden of responsibility to his films um how his films impact the industry. That would have been a decent point. Still would probably have disagreed with you a little bit because I don't see any negative consequences of Kevin Feige's business model necessarily, but it at least would have been a coherent point. but you opened up the article with the great power, great responsibility quote, presumably just because it's a meme, because your overall point of there are a bunch of Marvel movies and that makes me feel awkward doesn't have anything to do with power or responsibility. I'm really confused as to why you started with that sentence, other than because you wanted to make a reference to the Spider-Man movies and you couldn't figure out a better way to shoehorn it in, which is not a good sign for the rest of the article, given that you're supposed to be a professional writer making an opinion piece right now. Moving on.
All right. Eternals out Friday is somehow the 26th movie in the so-called Marvel Cinematic Universe, a Texas-sized web of interconnected superhero features that's been devouring cinemas since 2008's Iron Man. Wow, that is really dismissive and
The condescend, I'm not sure what bothers me more, the fact that she's being this condescending, or the fact
no,
that she's
dude,
being this condescending and not having any point.
it's a dude.
Oh, well, they had a very feminine writing style there for a second. So, okay. Sir, I don't know what point you're trying to make other than I find the Marvel Cinematic Universe to be a detriment to Hollywood somehow, even though it is currently the franchise that is most stably keeping Hollywood afloat. Because need I remind you, and this is the point I always make whenever somebody goes the MCU is a blight on cinema bullcrap. Whenever anyone does that, I always go, okay, so let's wind the clock back 20 years. The most successful franchise is now the Transformers franchise, done by Michael Bay. Do you think this is a better state of affairs? Because yeah, as occasionally cheesy as the Marvel Cinematic Universe might be, and occasionally they might have a dud here and there, every single one of the Marvel movies is better than even the best of the Transformers movies. Um, Pretty much. Like even Eternals, as bad as it is, and as terrible of an adaptation of the actual source material as it is still at least a little better than Transformers was. So pick your poison. Either you can deal with the Marvel Cinematic Universe being the standard bearer for Hollywood, like it's been for the last 20 years, or we can wind the clock back to the dark age of cinema when the most successful movies being made were the Michael Bay Transformers movies. Do you want that? Or are you just really, really, really bitter about the success of the Marvel movies for some godforsaken reason? So much so that you don't have any perspective as to how much worse Hollywood would be if it weren't for um, Marvel and by extension the superhero genre. Or would you have rather movies like BVS be the standard bearer for the comic book genre that is currently saving Hollywood? Because they are also, you know, Wonder Woman, Joker, and Shazam notwithstanding, are all worse than most of the Marvel movies. So, as occasionally cliche as Marvel might be, they beat the hell out of most of the alternatives. And yes, I will admit that Eternals was terrible. But given that they've done 26 movies and only about 10 of them have been, in my opinion, bad, it could be a lot worse. And if we're going by like the layman and the critical response to Marvel movies, apparently Eternals was the breaking point for most people. So most people probably would assume that movies that I would consider bad, like Captain Marvel, Thor: The Dark World, Eternals, and things like that, most of those apparently aren't bad according to the average layman. So even taking my own personal biases out of it, if Eternals truly is the first dud in the bunch after 15 years and 26 movies, I'd say that's a hell of a batting average, given that before that, Harry Potter and Twilight were the um like motivating franchises of Hollywood, and all of those were worse than your average Marvel movie. All of them, with the exception of maybe Source or Philosopher's Stone and Chamber of Secrets. Those were okay. Moving on.
Right. Okay. There are 7 more on-screen clones publicly announced through 2023's Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and many others are set to be in development, which sound less like a plan than a threat. Hold on, Dawn, for you. If Marvel continues to use the same bold pace of releasing 3 movies a year, by 2029 we'll have 50 of these things. It's not the matters. For you, Dalton. There's a lot of stupidity there. And also, I will have to disappear real quick because I think I need to fix my router real quick.
Okay.
But please do your type of thing to save the
Yeah.
air.
Okay. So your main problem appears to be this movie franchise is too successful, even though it's the movie franchise that is most stably sustaining Hollywood right now. Well, I'm sorry, but either everyone else needs to make better, more engaging movies, or they need to shut the fuck up and let the MCU continue to sustain Hollywood, because those are basically your only 2 options. If you don't like that Marvel movies are what is currently being the standard bearer for Hollywood, then make something people actually want to watch more than they want to watch Marvel movies. The problem being, because you're all a bunch of elitist, artistically inept pricks, you can't make a movie you consider good and also that would be engaging to the average audience, because there's an aristocratic distinction between the critical class and the film-going class. And the more you try to create something you consider to be real art, the more pretentious and subversive and frankly diluted the movie becomes, and the less people actually want to watch it. So if you want people to watch something other than Marvel movies, why don't you try to actually give them something worth watching other than Marvel movies? Because according to the average person's sensibilities, the artsy-fartsy, everything is a means to an end, everything is thematic, everything is symbolic, everything is metaphorical type movies are shite, and nobody wants to see them other than the critical class that continuously props them up. And according to the critical class, movies that people actually want to watch are some kind of blight on cinema. So somebody needs to cross the aisle here. Either we need to turn the average movie-going audience into a pseudo-intellectual hipstery conclave that actively disdains the idea of intrinsic value, or critics can get off their asses and realize the Frankfurt School was bollocks and not constantly praise movies that are objectively not good because they approach the correct themes and metaphors and meta-narratives. Derp. Either make good movies that people would watch instead of the Marvel movies, or stop bitching that Marvel movies are the only movies people actually want to see. If you want people to watch something other than Marvel movies, make something better and more engaging for the average audience than Marvel movies, if you jolly well please. And if you don't want to do that, if you think pandering to the audience makes you a bad person, if giving fan service makes you a bad person, if actually giving people a movie they want to watch makes you a bad person, as I've seen recently with the Ghostbusters Afterlife example. Apparently, according to the critics, actually giving people stuff they want to see makes them a bad person, or makes the creators of said movie a bad person. So, yeah, it's either get off your critical high horse and actually give people movies they'd want to see more than they want to see Marvel movies, or stop bitching that the only thing sustaining Hollywood is Marvel movies. Because the solution is fairly obvious. If you want people to be engaged with something other than Marvel movies, give them something to engage with other than Marvel movies. And don't bitch and moan and complain whenever they derive any sort of sincere meaning out of shit. Because for some reason, the critical class seems to regard sincerity as a vice rather than a virtue, or even just a neutral thing that should exist. Well, I'm sorry, but the audience prefers movies that are sincere and actually believes it's valuable for its own sake. That's why Ghostbusters Afterlife did better than Eternals, because Eternals was really the first Marvel movie that didn't at least try to be sincere in some way. And it reaped the benefits of that, because Kevin Feige wanted to make the Eternals appeal to the artsy-fartsy crowd, and as a result of forcefully appealing to the artsy-fartsy crowd, he actually ended up with a no-win scenario, because the film industry at large seems to hate the fact that Marvel is the dominant franchise, regardless of how much they might pander, and the actual film-going audience really hates when things are insincere or a means to an end rather than an end in itself, and so Eternals didn't fill the void that most Marvel movies fill, because it wasn't sincere, deliberately wasn't sincere, and so, naturally, it didn't do as well as any of the previous Marvel movies, even something like Shang-Chi or Thor the Dark World, because at the very least, Thor the Dark World was trying something that was genuinely sincere. Now, it failed to be sincere, or at least as sincere as the other Marvel movies, which is why Thor the Dark World is regarded as the worst one. Which you would think they would have known before they made the movie, because they've made, as you say, 25 movies previous to Eternals that should narrow down to them that when the material on offer is metaphysical or cosmic, the way to go about it is to go as over the top and self-embracing as you can. That's why the Guardians movies are successful. That's why Thor Ragnarok is the most successful Thor movie, because they finally got off their asses and realized we don't have to do Game of Thrones in space. We can do full Jack Kirby. Or at least they had understood that until Eternals came out, and then they decided to do the same mistake over again. And as a result, Eternals didn't do well, unsurprisingly, because people want things that embrace what they are. People want things that are valuable for their own sake, and people, most importantly, want something that is sincere and valuable on its own terms. If you don't want to provide that, you will fail. And it's a lesson that both you and apparently Kevin Feige need to relearn. Because Guardians will always do better than Eternals and Thor Ragnarok, because because Guardians and Thor Ragnarok embrace the source material, whereas Thor Ragnarok and Eternals actively shun the sincerity of the source material. Moving on.
Right. Okay. I am back. Also.
Yeah. I noticed. I just didn't want to stop the.
I know. That's also why I muted myself so I didn't like distract you or anything. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Plus, I need to set something. I need to set everything back up anyway. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yeah. Yeah. So moving on.
Yep.
Okay. Yet, why would these addicts pack up shop now? Feige and friends are printing money, in-game rate nearly $2.8 billion worldwide. For the evil little mouse, Disney and crazed fans are still slobbering over capes and spandex, if not with the same intensity as they did with Black Panther and Avengers Endgame, briefly the highest grossing film of all time before Avatar, buoyed by a re-release, blew past it. Wow, there's a lot of venom in that.
How dare you insinuate there's some kind of addictive nature to this, rather than just people enjoy sincerity. I know the fucking Frankfurt School influenced art school you went to when you decided to become a professional critic, my darling, told you that sincerity and things being valuable on their own terms was like the bane of artistic existence or whatever. But to most people, to people who don't have their heads so far wedged up their ass it might as well come out of their own neck again, to those people, sincerity and embracing what you are rather than actively shunning it is what sells. Because when people already love an existing IP, they want to see that IP respected, not artistically subverted because the only meaning that can be derived from art is external derp. No, it may have been a very long time for you, sir, since you were a kid and realized that you loved movies like Indiana Jones or The Goonies or what have you. But in general, most people who haven't been inculcated into the Frankfurt School art school ideology understand that when you love something, you love it for what it is and for what it fundamentally is internally, not for the socio-political and moralistic means to an end crap. Just like in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, when Hollywood made a bunch of Christian propaganda movies, nobody watched those or liked those either because people don't like being moralized and preached to by movies. They want to view something that is valuable on its own terms for its own sake. External reality be damned. And I don't know why I have to keep reminding you people of this. I especially don't know why I need to remind Kevin Feige of this because he used to get this, but he he wanted the Eternals to be an Oscar bait movie so badly that he got a Oscar bait director to do it, and therefore remove all the Jack Kirby from it because apparently Jack Kirby is too sincere and too colorful for them. And surprise, surprise, the minute he decided he wanted a movie to be more artistic than sincere, it did horribly. Because people like sincerity and they don't like pseudo intellectual moralism or externalization of value. Period. People want things to be valuable and self sustaining on their own terms for their own sake and by their own internal logic, if you jolly well please. Moving on.
Right. Okay. Those two films, however, also marked the franchise's peak of quality. Black Panther, lest we forget, was nominated for Best Picture in 2019. Dalton, before you do, because I feel like you. May I?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so as a guy who's done work on directing and stuff, granted, again, I'm still very much a novice, but I have some experience with that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And writing and pacing and stuff. I've worked on many stories myself. Black Panther is not a good movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's better than some. You know, it's obviously better than Captain Marvel, the Eternals. But
Thor the Dark World, Iron Man 2 or 3, yada yada yada.
I'll argue on those last two, but whatever.
Mm-hmm.
That's just a personal thing for me. Anyway,
right. Go on. Sorry.
And like Don and I have had discussions about Black Panther many times. It's not a bad movie. It lacks kind of a. It just makes a lot of mistakes that, like, first-time filmmakers do.
It's missing the wow factor.
Basically. Yeah, it's also and sometimes it's kind of constrained a bit by the Marvel formula. Not saying that's good or bad. I'm just more pointing that out as a thing. And plus, I don't personally. I don't care about the Oscars because I don't really think they hold any real merit for deciding what's a good movie or not.
Yeah. I wish they did. I wish they still abided by the rule of merit, but apparently,
honestly, I kind of wish they were.
Refuse.
My thing is I wish they had an open voting process to the public.
Yeah. Let the movie that actually manages to move the most people be the most regarded, rather than the movie that deliberately avoids being at all interesting to audiences and just is a socio-political and moral thematic wankfest.
Right,
like
and
most
I don't want to say
modern day
this.
Oscar movies are.
Yeah, I don't want to say this. I don't. I don't want to say this, but it has to be said. Like truthfully, like honestly, I think Black Panther's fine. Again, I think honestly, it could have taken some inspiration from The Lion King, like the original animated movie,
Mm-hmm.
a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it kind of did, but anyway, that's besides the point. Black Panther was only ever nominated for Best Picture because, according to the people, it was extremely diverse, and I'm using air quotes by the way,
Yeah.
and all that stuff. Like, you remember all the things that were
Yeah.
happening in 2019 and that stuff?
The upshot basically is it was nominated for moralistic reasons rather than qualitative reasons.
Yeah,
And as I said, the entire problem with the art school mentality today is it's all about external themes and external morality and external sociopolitical symbolism and external this and external that, and ne'er shall be brought up the concept of internally consistent meritocracy. The idea that a movie or a piece of art should be valued for its own sake rather than for whatever socio-political woo we can append to it post hoc. Yeah, that whole problem is why, even though I'm glad that Black Panther got nominated for the Oscar, because frankly I find it annoying that movies that are movies that are well liked and are enjoyed by many people almost are actively avoided by the Oscars, to the point that the Oscars has basically become, here's all the movies you didn't see, and the fact that you didn't see them makes them good because reasons. That's basically what the Oscars have become, the let's let the critics suck themselves off show, rather than the let's actually give audience or give let rather than actually holding the art of film or the art of cinema to any sort of quality standard. They just go, well, this is the most broadly speaking artistic movie, and therefore it doesn't matter if it's unwatchably boring or unwatchably dull. That means it's more meaningful than any of the movies people actually liked.
right. And also, just again, like honestly, I wouldn't say if I my partner doesn't want to believe, but the peak of quality for the MCU, to me at least, like Don, I'm sure you have your own opinion on this, because again, that itself is kind of subjective.
Right. To a degree, or at least there's arguments to be made for most of the movies actually.
Yeah.
You could make a sincere argument for any of them pretty much up until
Right.
about after up until after about Endgame actually. Well, and actually I would contest that Endgame was even all that good. I think most of the positive will that people have for Endgame was created by Infinity War, and in or Endgame didn't deliver on the promises made by Infinity War. So in my
Right.
opinion, Endgame is much worse than the actual majority of the movies because it didn't
Right.
actually deliver on its own promise or the promise of any of the previous ones.
Right. And yeah, I can kind of agree with that. Personally, my favorite MCU movie to this day is Captain America: Winter Soldier for various reasons. Again, that is a subjective view of mine, and how I think might be again in like the earliest phases leading up to Endgame and stuff.
Hmm.
That
Hmm.
is that is the peak of the franchise to me. Again, just I feel like that has to be reinstated immensely. So is that I think personally, Captain America: Winter Soldier is good for various reasons. How it's touched on like ideas of you know Big Brother and stuff like that, and also
Yeah, the socio-political like thriller thing they have
right,
going
but
on.
also but but also like the personal story of Steve Rogers and Bucky
Yeah.
Barnes in
It
that movie.
actually furthered what the first movie set up, which is a
Yeah,
good sign.
yeah. Um,
While still being a very, very tonally and like conceptually different movie, which was
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. And so yeah, that's my opinion on that. But again, it's very condescending that you basically single out movies that are effectively Oscar bait. And like, I don't want to say I don't think Black Panther really tried to be Oscar bait or anything.
But the entire reason why the critical class lost their shit over it was because of the external
Right?
locus
They
that they
said it
could
was
apply
the.
to it.
Like, do you remember when they said that it was finally the first black superhero movie?
And we all just collectively went, Blade?
Meteor Man, Blank Man. Like, granted, those are parodies, but still.
Right, but if we're going just based on like the seriously serious ones, then Blade not only predates the majority of the current crop of comic book movies, but also kind of predates even the like basic comic book movies, like because Blade came out before X-Men or the Raimi Spider-Man movies, and that's where I would define the beta test era of the comic book movie started was the Raimi Spider-Man and the X-Men.
Mm-hmm.
And Blade even well predates those. And in fact, it's arguable. I'm not sure how much I buy this, but it's arguable that um, if Blade hadn't done well, they never would have made Sam Raimi Spider-Man, or at the very least, there would have been a lot more risk to making Sam Raimi Spider-Man or the X-Men at that point. Um, so yeah, Blade is the appropriate response to that. Not to mention all the other ones and all the parody ones, and of course, if we're including the parody ones, then Hancock also came out before.
That is actually
Um,
like, I don't know why people don't like that movie. I like it, maybe because like it's just a typical hero's journey story with a hero that's already got superpowers.
yeah, I like it because it makes Hancock an asshole without necessarily making him a villain, which I like.
Yeah,
Like,
granted, there is a version, like original draft they had, where they just made him a straight up villain in the end, where they turned him into a villain.
mhm.
But to be fair, and I would have been interested to see that movie.
Yeah, it would have definitely been interesting, but the Hancock that we got in the final draft, I like that they managed to make him an asshole without necessarily making him a villain, because
Yeah,
comparing him to someone like Homelander by right should be a villain, whereas Hancock is just kind of your average everyday asshole, your average everyday
well,
curmudgeon who doesn't really like what he does for a living.
well
Whereas
that and
Homelander,
well,
yeah, go ahead.
I could go on an actual like maybe hour long discussion about Hancock in that movie.
Someday we should do like a video response to somebody talking about Hancock.
I've actually looked up that mainly on my own like personal time. I've looked
Hmm.
on that. Not only people talking about that movie.
I don't understand why, because I mean, it's Will Smith is good at anything you put him in. Let's be entirely honest about that. But also, especially for the time it came out, it's a genuinely interesting idea.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Anyway, we're off topic. We're way off topic there.
Yeah,
Um. Anyway, this guy just like it's a fairly typical like, oh, I hate superhero movies.
yeah. The comic book movies are never going to be real art because real art implies
Well,
blah blah
okay,
blah blah. You know,
I don't
page
know
two
if
and
he's
handicraft.
I don't know if he's talking about specifically comic book movies because some
But
people like,
at the very least, Marvel movies. Marvel movies will never be real art because da da da
yeah,
da. It appeals to too many people, and that means it can't be real art. Derp.
that is literally the definition. Well, not literally, but that is a definition of art.
Yeah, it's something that moves people on a um instinctual or personal level
Anyway,
without necessarily needing to. Yeah.
Shall we?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, so if I were Feige, well, I'd buy a Greek island. But I also wouldn't send my awards show tux out to the dry cleaners next year. Okay, we get it. It's Eternal's not a good movie, but you don't have to be like a dick about it.
Well, that, but also, frankly, and this is the one point I will kind of agree with this person on. Marvel movies are not supposed to be award-winning movies. And if you want to win awards, Mr. Feige, make a movie that's so good that they won't have a choice but to give it to you. That it worked well for Todd Phillips' Joker. Everyone in the critical class actively despised Joker, and they still ended up having to give it Best Director and Best Composer for Hilda Goodadauer there. But yeah, instead of playing their stupid game of, you know, an art house movie requires these elements, because that's the other thing about the Oscars that makes them next to impossible to actually take seriously. Even if the critical class's definition of what a Oscar movie um meant was consistent, even if it was, they genuinely do consider, something theme, something external value, to be a consistent model for what makes good art and like art house movies. Even if that were the case, within the context of this argument, you still have the problem of, we've known for a while that if um you pander to the right frameworks and the right narratives, you can make a movie that is otherwise objectively bad in terms of its filmmaking, in terms of its aesthetics, in terms of its casting, in terms of all of those things. You can make a movie that is bad in all those ways that panders to the right worldview, and it will still win Oscars. Because in a lot of cases in the modern era, the worldview being presented in a movie is more important than the objective quality of the movie. Um, and that's part of the reason why no one takes the Oscar seriously anymore, because it became very obvious a long time ago, probably starting around the late 90s, that the external worldview that you apply to a movie is more important to the critics than the actual internal mechanics of the movie. Um, and until that problem has been resolved, and until they start focusing more on quality, worldviews be damned, no one needs to take the Oscar seriously at all. Um, and that would be my advice to Kevin Feige. If you want to win an Oscar, stop playing their thematic game, because what you need to do is not just satisfy the critics, but also satisfy the people who you've already got on your side and in your camp. And if you can't do both, then go with what will satisfy your fans rather than what will satisfy the Academy. Because the Academy's legitimacy as a judge of what good art is dwindling more and more by the day. Or do the Joker route and just make a movie that is so compelling, so wonderful, so unabashedly good that even the Academy has to get their heads out of their asses and give it at least some praise. And that will also appeal to the audiences en masse. Because Joker cost about $60 million to make and managed to get um 1 billion 0.7 dollars in the box office. So yeah, instead of going um the Chloe Zhao route, why don't you give Todd Phillips a call, or Quentin Tarantino? Because Quentin Tarantino's been lobbying to make a Heroes for Hire movie for years. So why don't you just why don't you use the tools at your disposal, Mr. Feige, and get the guy who can conjure up an Oscar-worthy movie in about 5 seconds, who wants to make a Heroes for Hire movie. Because when Quentin Tarantino asks you, "Hello, Mr. Feige, can I make a Heroes for Hire movie for you?" You say yes, Kevin. You say yes, because that is a gift from heaven that you should never, ever, ever turn down. Same way um when the director for Doctor Strange was still up in the air, the first one. I heard from somewhere that Guillermo del Toro briefly asked you to make Doctor Strange, and I can't for the life of me understand why you didn't say yes to that. Maybe in the third Doctor Strange movie you'll finally get around to it, and we'll get Guillermo del Toro's Doctor Strange 3, but I'm not holding my breath because for some reason you turned down Guillermo del Toro. Why, I have no idea, especially when the alternative was Scott Derrickson, but that was really, really, really stupid. Especially if you want an Oscar-worthy movie. Why don't you actually get Oscar-worthy directors, not just Oscar-winning directors, because there's a massive difference. An Oscar-winning director can be someone who just panders to the right framework. An Oscar-worthy director is an actual reflection on the quality of the movie, because that's the distinction. So many movies in this day and age win Oscars by pandering to what the Oscars want, rather than focusing on quality and then forcing the Academy to pay attention to them. Anyway, moving on.
Mm-hmm. Besides being the flick to surpass James Bond series' scant 25 chapters, Eternals holds a less illustrious record. It's the worst reviewed Marvel entry so far. Nomadland Oscar winner Chloe Zhao's movie holds a mere 53% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yes, because she is one of those directors who did not win her Oscar by quality. She won it by pandering. She gave the Oscars what the Oscars were looking for, quality be damned, and the Oscars ate it up. Whereas if you got somebody like what's his name, who directed Shawshank Redemption, Michael Darabont, I believe. If you got somebody like Darabont or like Tarantino or like Todd Phillips or like Guillermo del Toro, those guys won their Oscars often by creating a movie so good that even though the Academy didn't want to give it to them, they had to. And that's the kind of movie maker you need if you genuinely want a Marvel movie to win the Oscars, Kevin. Stop focusing on who won the Oscars and start focusing on why they won it. Because as we all know at this point in time, there are two different kinds of movies. There's the movies that win Oscars by pandering to what the criteria the Oscars are already looking for, and there are movies that win Oscars by being so good that they're actually worthy of Oscars. You want somebody in the second category. You do not want anyone from the first. And if you get too many people from the first category, Eternals is the kind of movie you're going to make. Because Chloe Zhao's problem was she inserted a bunch of art house, quote unquote, subversion into the Marvel franchise rather than somebody like Guillermo del Toro or Quentin Tarantino or Todd Phillips would do, which would be, let's make a movie so good they'll be forced to give us Oscars. Yeah, so call some of the people, and I know you know some of them, who have actively asked you to make Marvel movies. Del Toro wanted to make a Doctor Strange movie, let him do that. Tarantino wants to make a Heroes for Hire movie, let him do that. Todd Phillips, I don't know what you task him to do, but give him a call and say, what franchise would you want to have, and then make that movie. Done.
Since he did the Hangover movies, I could totally see him doing like a Deadpool movie if they bring Deadpool in.
Oh my god. That just sweet, merciful fucking Hecate. What? I want. And I want.
Or if we're going with his Joker recommendation. Honestly, I would love him to see him direct like an episode of Moon Knight, if possible.
If they ever do an actual Moon Knight movie, I wouldn't mind seeing him do that.
Yeah.
But honestly, like I said, the best option would be just to ask him, what kind of movie do you want to make? Because I get the feeling that Todd Phillips is the kind of director who, having made a movie like Joker, never wants to make a movie like Joker again, except if it's in the same franchise. So yeah, at that point, it's just a question of tell him what um, ask him what he wants to make, and then let him make it. Because the other great thing about Todd Phillips' reputation is even before he won the Oscars for Joker, he was very good at taking a movie with a very minimum budget and making a success of it. Like the first Hangover movie was made for, I want to say, about $30 million, and it made about 400. Same thing with Hangover 2. It was about 35 and made about 450. And Hangover 3 was the same way. He's very good at taking the money you give him, the money you invest in him, and making a massive profit of it. And as we know, like I said, the capstone of this is he takes $60 million for Joker or thereabouts and turns it into a billion and change.
I'm sorry, I'm just trying to think of what Marvel character would be best suited for Todd Phillips' style. Because he has a very wide style. If we're
Again, that's one of the reasons why I advocate for just calling him, asking him what kind. We want to work with you, Mr. Phillips. What Marvel can, actually, here's what you do. I know, Kevin, that you tend to, when you get a new person on the payroll who doesn't read much comics, you just have them read through whatever character you want him or you want them to work on. So here's what you do. I know the Marvel omnibuses exist. I know the Marvel Epic collections exist. I know what do you call them? The Marvel God damn it! Why can I not think of it's the gray hardcover ones that Marvel does. Shit. It's not the Epic collections. That's fuck me. God damn it. Gray covered hardcover Marvel omnibuses. I can't think. God damn it. Not Absolute, that's DC. Frick. But in any case, I know various different kinds of omnibus editions of various characters exist. So just send him a pile of Marvel omnibuses, which I know you have the money for, and I know you could probably get it done in-house, and just be like, here are all the characters that we think would work best for you. Which one do you want? Or better yet, just send him a grab bag of every character that you haven't done yet that you might be able to make something out of, and just have him pick one. And the rest will be history. And in the meantime, while you're waiting for Todd Phillips to pick one, you already have Tarantino begging to do a Heroes for Hire movie, or at least a Luke Cage movie. So the correct answer, of course, for that would be yes, sir. And you already at one point had Guillermo del Toro offering to do Doctor Strange for you. And I worry slightly about how things are shaping up with Sam Raimi currently. So assuming that Doctor Strange 2 doesn't quite do as well as you think it's going to do, then and you need a new director and you need to change direction, call up Guillermo and be like, here, because it would just a Guillermo del Toro Doctor Strange movie is one of those ones that works so well it's almost a duh, and a Tarantino Heroes for Hire movie is one of those that works so well it's almost a duh. So use the resources at your disposal, Mr. Feige. That's my 2 cents. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. All right. So my review for the post, I gave it 1 star. The sleepy dud jumps between so-so and so embarrassing. It introduces some 10 bland characters we don't enjoy or care about, but like our distant cousins in Wyoming, we have to see them again and again because they're in the damn family. Wow, that is. I mean, technically he's not wrong, but also
In this case it's true, but the problem is he's universalizing that out to everyone else in the MCU as well, and I don't. And here's the thing, and this is why this is so stupid. Because you don't like Marvel movies at all, it seems, or you have a chip on your shoulder about how successful they are, at least. Um, you can't see the obvious solution to Eternal's problem, or the obvious problem that Eternals had that most other Marvel movies don't have, which is this. Back in 2014, Marvel did one of their riskiest maneuvers and gave us Guardians of the Galaxy. Or it might have been 2015, but regardless, it was in that same general vicinity. They gave us Guardians of the Galaxy, and instead of trying to fix the Guardians, they took what was in the comics, at least tonally and conceptually, and went as nuts with it as they felt like they could get away with. Which, granted, involved some changes from the source material because the source material is even wackier than the movie we ended up getting in 2014. But not only was Guardian successful, it was gangbusters, and a lot of people regard it as one of the top Marvel movies ever made. And eventually, of course, in 2017, they made a sequel, which also, while not quite as well liked as the second or as the first one, did gangbusters and made it obvious that this kind of tone and aesthetic works. And then, of course, they did the same thing with Thor Ragnarok, having realized that they were doing wrong by the Thor franchise. The difference being between Eternals or a Thor The Dark World and the Guardians movies and Thor 3 is one of these sets tries to fix what is broken about the IP by shunning everything that makes the IP unique and lively. And the other, at least within the context of making a movie, embraces as much as it can the wacky Silver Age Jack Kirby aesthetic. And given that both Guardians and Thor Ragnarok worked extremely well for Marvel, using this kind of cosmic, weird, over the top IP, what they should have done for Eternals, especially given that DC had conned onto this and given us Shazam and Suicide Squad 2, given that it had been established that when you are faced with a really weird comic book IP, be sincere and do your best to embrace the weirdness and the wackiness, because that's what people actually want. Rather than do that, however, they fell back to their Thor Ragnarok plan and tried to fix, quote unquote, or not Thor Ragnarok, but they fell back to the Thor the Dark World plan and tried to fix the IP by shunning everything weird and wacky about it. Despite the fact that the weird and wacky ones had been extremely successful for Marvel, and the let's try to serious this up because we're ashamed of the source material crashes and burns every time they try it. Which means that yes, Kevin Feige does apparently have his head too far up his ass. Because the correct choice was always for Eternals. If you're going to make an Eternals movie, which you don't necessarily have to make, but if you're going to make an Eternals movie, embrace what it is and go full tilt wacky with it. just like you did with Guardians, just like you did with Thor Ragnarok, just like DC did with Suicide Squad 2 and Shazam. That was the correct answer. But for some reason, they had to relearn the same lesson over again because they spontaneously got ashamed of Jack Kirby all over again. But you, my dear writer of this article, actively dislike the wacky zaniness of something like Guardians and Thor Ragnarok, and therefore you can't see making the Eternals franchise more like the Guardians franchise or the Thor franchise, or at least the third one. You can't see that as the obvious solution that it is. Even though logic dictates that because the wacky cosmic ones were successful when adapting a wacky cosmic IP, and the overly self-serious ones in the face of cosmic weirdness were not successful. Even though that is very clearly demonstrated by the box office and by the critical response as well. For some reason, Marvel wants to win an Oscar, so they tried to make an Oscar bait movie rather than making a movie good enough to justify an Oscar. So yeah, that's the solution. The solution is take what you did for Guardians and what you did for Thor Ragnarok and turn it up to an 11 in accordance with how weird and trippy the Eternals IP is. Because as weird and wacky as Guardians is, Eternals leaves it in the dust because it was Jack Kirby at his most unencumbered and free to do whatever the fuck he wanted. Moving on.
Yep. All right. Yes, I know the recent Shang-Chi, I think is how you properly pronounce it.
According to Marvel, I've always pronounced it Shang-Chi, and the comics have always pronounced it Shang-Chi, but sure.
Okay, I don't know, man. Other languages are hard for me to
Yeah,
learn.
in any case, the Simu Liu Shang-Chi movie.
Yeah, I know the recent Shang-Chi and Legend of the Ten Rings was very good, and Black Widow was fine. The Shang-Chi was okay to me, you know.
It at least was trying something interesting. Black Widow was just meh.
I mean, I got a good idea out of it, so.
Well, yes, but and I mean this is both a compliment, and a snarky joke. You can make something good out of anything, pretty much. Or at least we can after about 3 hours of talking about it.
Fair enough. All right. However, and deep down, you know this, Marvel fans, the MCU's best days are behind it. Before the pandemic, we were being force-fed flavorless Soylent Green like Captain Marvel and Ant-Man and the Wasp, and there will be more uninspired crepola. So much more. Okay, so he's not wrong about Captain Marvel. Ant-Man and the Wasp, I could take it or leave it.
Yeah, but the thing is, the Captain Marvels, the Eternals, and Ant-Man and the Wasp are all outliers. The as much as I would agree, Marvel hasn't been batting at 100% ever since Captain Marvel came out, or just before. Even acknowledging that, I'll still point out that they get it right more often than they get it wrong, and when they get it right, they get it really right. I would agree someone needs to tap Kevin Feige on the shoulder and ask him what the fuck are you doing. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the best days of the MCU are behind it. 3 or 4 bad movies in a row doesn't necessitate that every movie from now on needs to be bad. It just means that Kevin Feige and crew need to have a conversation about the direction they want this to move in and go from there. They still have the opportunity to fix what they've broken. And the fact that you don't even want to acknowledge that they still have an opportunity to fix what's been broken is really, really telling. Now, granted, if the next couple are bad, especially given that one of them is Doctor Strange too, I will be mad, but I will hold out hope that they can still fix it. Because the thing is, it took 20 movies, 18 or 20 movies, to build the MCU. So it's going to take more than 5 bad ones in a row to undo it. They still have the opportunity to assess what they're doing, hopefully look at what the actual people on the internet are saying, because that's a resource that Hollywood in general needs to tap into more, because it's literally the world's largest focus group. Yeah, but they still have the opportunity to examine the movies they've made, examine what they've done wrong, double check it with the fans in general, and return to the days of actually embracing what IPs are rather than shunning them. And it's worth noting that the movie that was the best movie that has come out this year, which is Shang-Chi, is also the movie that embraced the most weirdness. Granted, it should have been Eternals, because Eternals is a weirder franchise in general. But they tried to fix Eternals, whereas they let Shang-Chi kind of be its own thing. So that's the solution. The solution is stop being ashamed of your own IPs, Kevin. You used to be the one to tell this to other people. You used to be the one to tell the people over at Fox they shouldn't be afraid of the actual X-Men. You used to be the one to tell Sony that they shouldn't be afraid of the actual Spider-Man. So take your own advice, Mr. Feige, and stop being afraid of your own IPs either. Especially given that the times that you've embraced what the IPs have to offer are the times you've been the most successful. Moron. Moving on.
Yeah. Okay. Getting out when the going is good, and ensuring a legacy goes against our modern more attitude. Instead, we wring out every last penny from something until it dies a pathetic death. I mean,
That is a problem, and I would agree with it. But I think you're jumping the gun slightly because you have a personal bias against the MCU, and that's the problem. You're not giving this advice in the hopes that the MCU will come back better or stronger. You're giving this advice in the hopes that Marvel will finally shut the fuck up,
um,
or at least that's what your argument thus far has implied. Because you bitched at
I
Marvel
think he
for
doesn't
having
say
30+ movies.
what he says after. I think he just hates Disney, which I can kind of get.
Like believe me, I'm not a big fan of corporations either, but whether we like it or not, Disney are the people who have these IPs, and for the most part, given that Disney bought Marvel back in like 2010, Disney oversaw the majority of the good Marvel movies. So just because it's Disney doesn't mean they can't make good shit. Granted, the best alternative for everyone is for the corporation to own an IP and then not really care one way or the other about it, thereby letting the artists who actually do care about the IP do what they do, which is the strength of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that um the Disney Star Wars don't have, because Disney keeps meddling with their own brand in terms of Star Wars, whereas they didn't do that at least until um, post Endgame
Right.
for Marvel.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
moving on.
Over at Disney, they've turned Star Wars into a never-ending story and are forcing Harrison Ford to play Indiana Jones again at 79 years old. The guy already looked exhausted when he made Crystal Skull 13 years ago, but it's Disney who's holding the whip now.
Well, Crystal Skull was bad. in just about every way it could conceivably be bad. That might have had something to do with why he was exhausted. I have a little bit of faith in James Mangold, because I mean, the guy who gave us Logan and the Wolverine, which actually the Wolverine wasn't that bad. In fact, it was a pretty good X-Men movie, and comparing it to its predecessor, or the thing it was supposed to be a sequel to, it was worlds better. So I have a little bit of faith in James Mangold. Um, and I think that if um, Harrison Ford ends up working with someone that he can actually get along with, then he'll stop being cynical for at least long enough to make the movie.
Right.
I don't blame him for being cynical about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, because Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was obviously going to be bad the entire time. Moving on.
Mm-hmm. It wasn't always that way. Seinfeld went off the air in 1998 as one of TV's most popular shows. In 2002, tennis player Pete Sampras retired shortly after he won the U.S. Open. Harper Lee wrote just one great novel with To Kill a Mockingbird. Ghost Set, Watchmen doesn't count.
I find it interesting you literally had to ignore the fact that she made a sequel.
Here's Uncle Johnny's advice. There's real dignity in walking away on top. Or flying, such as the case may be. Wow.
Okay, that's I get what he's getting at, but at the same time, I find it a little bit hilarious because it seems like he just doesn't like superhero movies. And here's the thing, and on this point I can kind of agree with you, because here's the unexamined elephant in the room here. If Marvel stops, DC will probably keep going, at least for the ones they have already in development. And the DC ones actually look better than most of the Marvel movies have recently. So, assuming that Marvel does, either quietly crash and burn or quietly take a break for a few years, the comic book genre will not go away, because DC will probably pick up where Marvel left off. And so much better. So I'm gonna keep an eye on you, sir. And when a couple years from now, when Marvel has basically gone all but quiet, and DC is the current runner of the comic book genre, are you going to create a movie or an article saying, I told Marvel to stop, but DC picked up the slack, and now I'm mad there are more comic book movies because I wanted comic book movies to be over? Are you going to make an article like that? Or are you going to say, yay, I won, and now we get better comic book movies? I'm gonna be very closely judging you depending on which of those two options you make. Whether you go, yay, Marvel stopped, but DC is still going, and that's good news for the comic book genre, or you go, I told Marvel to stop because I assumed that when Marvel stopped, that would kill the entire genre off, and it didn't, because DC continues to make good ones. So just throwing that out there. If you still, a couple years from now, make a, now DC needs to stop because it's still sustaining the genre and I don't like the genre, if you make that kind of article, then we'll be back to yell at you. But if you make the, yay, I got what I wanted and DC is actually making good comic book movies, then I will rescind some of the meaner things I've said to you, because it really seems like you're the type of person who just wants the comic book movie genre to go away because you don't understand it or like it or consider it valid. And that's bullshit.
Right. Yeah, that was the end of the article.
Okay. Next.
Yeah. Yeah. So, full disclosure, folks. This is another Word document that I had Dalton make for me. Because I couldn't get to his screen rant.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, just full disclosure. If you want to see the actual, there's a link down below. Hopefully, I honestly probably don't have a lot to say about this, which is weird. Yeah, So it's from ScreenRant.com. Superman is using magic to replace his lost superpowers.
When I actually read the title, I actually smiled a little bit because I like the idea of Superman having, or I like the idea of Superman finally getting off his ass and learning some magic. But as we'll see, they kind they kind of took my enjoyment and they ruined it by having somebody else help him with it. So that does take a little bit of the fun out of it.
Right. Also, just because like it wasn't on here, this is written by Sean Corley and published November 3rd, 2021. I mean, November 13th, 2021. Subheader is Superman's powers have been in flux lately, and in Action Comics 1036, it is revealed he has secretly been using magic to supplement them.
And again, if he was actually the one doing it, I'd be happy, but they give him an out, and that kind of annoys me. Because as something I've said for many, many years is, since Superman knows that he's vulnerable to magic, he really should have learned some protection spells for himself. Same thing with Batman. If Batman is the king of the acquired skills, then one of the skills that he should learn how to acquire is magic, because he might have to fight a magic user one of these days. And to their credit, in Batman the Animated Series, in an episode where Clarion the Witch Boy and Etrigan the Demon showed up, they actually had Batman be the one to use a spell to recombine Jason Blood and Etrigan at the end. So they've done little hints here and there as to Batman's magical potential. And to their credit, in Superman the Animated Series, they had Superman have an immense amount of respect for Dr. Fate. But in both cases of Batman and Superman, Batman, you are the I can acquire any skill I want person. So one of the skills you need to acquire is magic, especially given that you have friends who would be willing to teach you, and you have enough money to purchase grimoires. And Superman, you should learn magic because again, you have friends who would also be willing to teach you, and it's one of your only vulnerabilities, so it's kind of stupid for you to just leave it open there. Moving on.
With his powers on the wane in recent months, Superman has turned to other resources, including magic, to boost his strength, a fact which he's largely kept secret. In Action Comics 1036, Man of Steel and the Authority arrive on War World, ready to liberate its enslaved masses from the despot Mongol. But Mongol knows Superman's secret. Not only has Superman had to contend with
Bless you.
Thank you. Not only has Superman had to contend with fluctuating power levels, but after hearing the atrocities Mongol has been perpetuating on Warworld, takes it upon himself to free the countless billions imprisoned on the hellish planet. In the recent concluded miniseries, Superman and the Authority, the Man of Steel begins assembling a new incarnation of the venerable team. This new version includes classic members Apollo and Midnighter, fighting alongside newcomers Natasha Irons, Manchester Black, and the Enchantress.
Wait, Manchester Black was an original member, wasn't he?
No, he was part of the Elite.
Oh, sorry, I was confusing the Authority and the Elite there for a second. I was confused. But it's good to see Manchester Black again. I like him.
Hey, I like the animated version of him.
I mean, I don't mean I like him in terms of like I agree with him. I mean, he's an enjoyable character.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. Like, he's fine. Bit of a dick.
I honestly kind of wish they had given the Elite more to do after Superman versus the Elite, because it would have been interesting to have them be an established presence in the DC universe more often than just that one storyline. Now, granted, the Superman versus the Elite storyline is amazeballs, and the movie, which was um shit, uh, what was the movie's title?
Superman versus the Elite.
Oh, did they just use the title
Well,
over again?
the comic is a different name.
Oh, okay, yeah. But
It's it's whatever happened to Truth, Justice, the American Way.
right, okay. So yeah, in the whatever happened to Truth, Justice, and the American Way was the comic, and Superman versus the Elite was the movie. Um, but in any case, I wish they had treated the Elite as a um existing superhero team and given them other stuff to do rather than just that storyline. Despite the fact that that storyline is an amazing storyline, it's also an amazing origin for the Elite, and therefore they should have used the Elite more often. But that would require DC to know what they're doing, and as we know, they don't have the time, so nah.
Yeah. At the conclusion of the series, Superman revealed to his new team their purpose. They were going to help him free the citizens of World. After helping Batman turn back an invasion from the Dark Multiverse, Superman and the Authority took off for World. And they arrive in Action Comics 1036, written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, with art by Daniel Sampre, colors by Adriano Lucas, and letters by Dave Sharp. We talked about Philip Kennedy Johnson, I believe, a couple weeks ago or last week.
We did.
Yeah.
He seems to be good at writing stories, even though his ideas of the characters are kind of foobar.
Yeah. As Superman and the Authority draw closer to the destination, it is clear Mongol knew they were on the way. Um, Confirmed by the crucified corpse left as a warning, as well as the massive flare shaped like Superman's shield coming from Warworld. Superman, his resolve strengthened even further, burst into Mongol's throne room, declaring his intent to free the planet's citizens.
Yeah, this sounds like a really, really badass story.
Yeah. He is then attacked by Mongol, who exposes the secret of his power loss. Manchester Black confirms this and reveals the Enchantress has been using her magic to help Superman with his strength levels. And Black himself has been using his illusion powers to create the image of a strong, vital Superman.
See, this is my major problem with this story. It would have been more meaningful if Superman himself was using the magic rather than outsourcing it.
Yeah.
Because that actually would have made Superman look more resourceful. Because here's the thing: as 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 vital to his as vital to his mythos as his powers are, if Clark Kent lost his powers tomorrow, he would still be trying to help people because that's just who he is. So if you genuinely wanted to do this kind of story where Superman's powers are fluctuating or waning or whatever, instead of having the Enchantress um, bolster his powers, have Superman go to John Constantine, and have him teach Superman the spells he needs to do what he does. Or actually, I just thought of this. I believe sometime in the Golden Age, it was revealed that in one of Doctor Fate's grimoires, there's actually a spell to grant the powers of the Kryptonian. Um, although it's temporary from what I remember, um, it only lasts a day. But if Doctor Fate, for example, had taught Superman how to do that spell, and he just had to keep casting that spell on on himself over and over again, that would be more interesting because it would show that powers or no powers, Superman is going to do what he can to help people, and he's going to do what he can to remain the symbol of, um, the best of humanity that he always has been. Because that is something actually that I can see Superman doing is, oh, my powers are gone. Well, you know, I don't necessarily need them for my own ego, but I need them to help people, and so I'm going to learn how to do it myself. Having him outsource them to Enchantress and Manchester Black kind of makes it seem like he's just trying to cope with their absence, which is less meaningful. Whereas if he actually got off his ass and went and made use of the tools at his disposal by calling out to a couple of his friends to teach him magic, that would solve the character aspect of it. It would solve the um, story aspect of it, and it would leave potential open for later in Superman's runs, because this could be a good reason why, um, if you as the writer wanted to have Superman's vulnerability to magic no longer be a thing, this would be the kind of storyline you'd want to do it in. Because here's how I would write this: his powers are waning, yada yada yada, whatever. He goes to either Doctor Fate or John Constantine for magic tutelage so that he himself can bolster his powers. Then, after presumably he gets his powers back later on, you have him fight a magic user character like Felix Faust or Wotan or whomever, and then they realize that he no longer has the vulnerability to the magic, because while he was studying with Fate or Constantine or whomever, or Zatanna, whoever he decides to go be his magic tutor, he learned enough magic to cast protection spells on himself. So now his vulnerability to magic is no longer, which would show that Superman, regardless of powers, is a thinking person who can take initiative at times, because that's the not only does that work really really well as a storyline, it also fixes one of the big problems that a lot of people who don't really understand Superman have with Superman, which is he's just the powers. If you took his powers away, he wouldn't be able to do anything. Well, if you wanted to do this kind of storyline, you could show that regardless of the powers, Clark Kent is going to do whatever he can to help people and continue to be the symbol of hope that he is, even if that includes developing a new fucking skill. And it would also show that Clark is capable of developing new fucking skills as and when he needs to. Moving on.
Yeah. Man, I don't really have anything to say because I never read this, so I'm going off of this. Still seems kind of dumb.
Mm-hmm.
Not Superman using magic, but more so, yeah, basically everything you said.
Yeah. What do you think of my sort of improvisational rewrite of it, by the way? Because I know spontaneous rewrites are kind of your thing, but I have obviously this is kind of my
Yeah,
wheelhouse. So
I mean it's kind of your ballpark, and honestly, it works. It's fine. Plus, it stays within the character, which I know you don't really like Superman much. Well,
mm-hmm.
not like, but you're not really.
He's not really one of my characters. But
Yeah.
I will say that one of the upshots of us being friends is you've kind of I think you've kind of rubbed off on me a little bit, because I used to not really understand why people like Superman, but I think because of all the stuff you've said over the years, I get it better now. He's still not one of my characters, and I still don't.
I get you.
It's still not really my thing, but I have more respect and more knowledge of the character now, and especially given that this is a magic-based storyline, I can see a lot of potential with this that would solve not only character problems, not only um, like fanboy problems, but would also solve one of the biggest issues I've always had with the character, which is if he knows he's vulnerable to magic and he has friends who are willing to teach him magic, then why doesn't he learn at least enough magic to protect himself? And you could have made the argument before this storyline that he never had a reason to. Well, motherfucker has a reason to now, doesn't he? So yeah.
My major issue is with like the illusion that Manchester Black is creating. Like that doesn't make sense to me. That's my major issue.
Because Superman probably wouldn't care about that necessarily.
Yeah, looking strong and stuff.
Yeah, because in all honesty, and I just went on a ramble about how I've gained more respect for Superman, but Superman is pure and innocent enough that I don't think he even notices how intimidating he is most of the time. So if he all of a sudden wasn't, I don't think he would care. Except for maybe in the context of he wants to um and this is the out I guess I'd give them if they wanted to go this route. I could see him wanting to still look like Superman just to not worry anybody and just to remain the like symbol of hope that he is for people. Because that's the part I think that is more important to Clark. The part that lets him be a symbol of hope and a symbol of a better tomorrow, basically.
Yeah.
He'd care about sustaining the way he looks mostly for other people's sake rather than his own.
Mm-hmm. I get you. Anyway,
Yeah, moving on.
Current readers of the Superman titles have known for months about his powers, but he has been keeping it secret from the rest of the DC universe and even his own team. Only the Enchantress and Manchester Black knew. Superman felt the need to maintain appearances in order to convince Mongol he was a legitimate threat. However, the warlord saw right through it, forcing Superman and his allies to rethink their strategy. Superman also felt using magic, the only other thing besides kryptonite that could really hurt him, was important to keeping up appearances. So much so he is allowing the Enchantress to prop his strength up. Yeah, that is really dumb.
Yeah, again, I get what they're going for because like I said, there is a version of this and I came up with it in about 5 seconds that I could see working. But again, what you should have done is number one, you don't leave the Enchantress in charge of this because the Enchantress is an unstable villain. Um, what you do is you have him go to either John Constantine, Doctor Fate, Zatanna, or all three, um, and you have him learn for himself how to do this. And yes, you could still have it be that he went to them in secret, or you could have honest, honestly, what I would do is you have John Constantine say something kind of cheeky and snide because John Constantine about it, and have everyone else sort of look at him funny, and then look over at Superman and be like, John, or have Superman be like, John, I thought we were gonna keep this a secret, and then have John be like, oh, just Josh and you, mate, and then have the rest of the league or the rest of whoever he's standing there with be like, so what was that about? And Superman just be like, don't worry about it, let's go. And then you leave that Easter egg in the back of people's minds so that when it gets revealed of like, oh hey shit, Superman went to John Constantine and learned some magic when his powers started going on the fritz. Um, but he didn't want to tell anybody because and here's the other thing. Instead of keeping it a secret for appearance's sake, keep it a secret because there are people who can, because obviously, tutor or no tutor, Superman's not going to be an expert at magic from a few lessons. So you keep it a secret that he's using magic to supplement himself so that the magic user villains don't go, oh, that's an interesting piddling little spell you have there. Snaps fingers, and now it's gone, and you're mortal, so dead. Because there are many, many magic user villains who could probably walk through that spell like it was nothing, and for that reason, and the reason of you know you don't want to you don't want to give an obvious vulnerability for yourself. That's why you keep it secret, not because he cares about the appearances, but because he cares about helping people. And also, he knows well enough to know that magic is dangerous and that he's outclassed in terms of magic. Because the only other alternative would be turning Superman into a Magus in like 5 minutes, which doesn't make any fucking sense and would be really, really annoying. But if you have him get just good enough at it to sustain his powers and needing to keep it secret so that the magic users don't walk through his wards or whatever, like they're fucking veils, that would make more sense. Keep it practical and keep it in the sense of for example, if Felix Faust learned that Superman was using basic magic to supplement his powers, you know full well that he and Wotan and every other magic user, probably Sortitu, would just walk up to him, throw him through several walls with no magical protection, and then he'd be dead, or at least in intensive care. Whereas if he keeps it secret and he makes sure that none of his tutors tell anybody, that at least gives them a reason not to try and use their powers on him, and therefore he can continue helping people. That makes much more sense than, oh, I just don't want to appear weak compared to I was before, blah, 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 blah. No, fuck you. Superman doesn't care, and he's never cared about being stronger than everybody. That's what makes him so good at being Superman, because while most people would let the fact that he's walking around in a world of cardboard, his words, go to their heads, Superman sees it as a reason not to hurt anybody and wanting to protect everybody. Moving on.
Okay. Likewise, Superman had to ally himself with illusion caster Manchester Black. He doesn't just create illusions, like he's a powerful telekinetic.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, because I know it's been a while since I read What's So Funny About Justice in the American Way, but that's not the only thing Manchester Black could do, as far as I remember.
Yeah,
because from what I remember, the way that Superman in What's So Funny beat Manchester Black was basically temporarily lobotomizing him by basically giving him a massive migraine, telekinetic migraine.
Yeah. Whose snarly anti-authoritarian impulses put him at odds with the Man of Steel.
Okay, at least they're keeping that consistent, because
I will say, okay, yeah, he is anti-authoritarian. I'll give him that, but my thing with like Manchester Black is how I've always viewed him is like, he's again like he's kind of
a loose cannon.
That, and also like he's I'm trying to remember the words here. He and the elite believed in, or still believe, I guess, in doing whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes to get the job done, consequences be damned, basically.
And for bad guys, it's kill them all and let God sort them out.
Mm-hmm.
Which, like, that's the thing that's always stuck with me, and like that story with Superman vs. the Elite, because I've only seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. If you haven't read the comic, I would highly recommend reading the comic, because the comic is good.
Yeah, I gotta find a copy of that.
I sent you a review of comics done by Linkara.
Yeah, Linkara. I've seen bits and pieces, so I probably need to sit down and watch it myself, actually.
Mm.
Anyway, moving on. The last thing. Okay. In order to save the citizens of War World from the despotic Mongol, Superman is using magic for probably the first time in his career. While it is not known how much longer he can sustain this, for now it is giving him his edge.
But see, this is the problem with the storyline. You just specified that he himself is not using it. That he's getting the Enchantress to use it for him. And this would be another reason why it would be interesting to have him actually learn it himself. Because magic is extremely draining of the person using it. That's why you have to That's why you have to be very careful how much magic you use at any given point, especially in the DC universe. So if you had a situation where he actually, Clark Kent himself, got off his ass, went to John Constantine, or went to Dr. Fate, or went to Zatanna, or all three, or whoever, and learned how to sustain his Kryptonian powers, probably using that spell that Dr. Fate knows to give somebody the powers of a Kryptonian, on a daily basis. If he had to use that spell, it would be interesting to have him basically have a time clock with it, because magic is physically draining. Not to mention the fact that because he no longer has the powers he has, Superman would have to experience what it's like to be physically drained, or exhausted for the first time in his life, pretty much,
Actually,
or thereabouts.
I mean, they did introduce that thing where it's like the solar flare deal. Like if he uses all the energy in his cells.
Okay, so they did do that as far as Rebirth goes, but what my point is, you could have somebody exhausting themselves to help people using magic, and then because A, he's not an experienced magic user, and B, he's not experienced with dealing with exhaustion, you could have that be kind of a ticking clock in the background for the readers of like, the more Kryptonian like powers he has to use, the more magic he has to use to cause it, and therefore the more of his own energy he's burning up. Which would lead to a situation, you could have it lead to a situation where, like, let's say he's in the middle of a fight with Brainiac, and he can feel that his energies are almost depleted. So he has to hurry it up, because if he gets too low, Brainiac is going to realize that he's vulnerable, and then, he's A, not going to be able to help people, and B, he's going to die. That would be an interesting ticking clock, but that would require actually having Superman be the one who's wielding the magic, rather than outsourcing it to Enchantress, which, by the way, is, again, rather stupid, because the Enchantress is a villainess. So if she knows, which she knows now, that Superman needs magic to bolster his powers, she knows that as soon as the opportunity presents itself, she can just stop supporting him, and then boom, he gets punched through a wall, no more Superman, and then she takes over the world or whatever. It's very dangerous to have a villainess do that kind of thing, because she's going to betray him at the drop of a hat, as we all know. And if she doesn't, then the writers don't know how to use Enchantress properly. Yeah, moving on. As happy as I am to finally have Superman be adjacent to magic, they did it in the stupidest conceivable way possible, for some reason. And I'm assuming Brainstormer left to do a thing.
I'm back. Sorry, I was handling something real quick.
Mm-hmm.
So the next thing we'll be talking about is something I really don't care to talk about. But I'm the one who sent it because I knew we had to.
I thought I sent it, but
No, you did send it. I thought about sending it, but
okay. Yeah. Well, at least you're no longer on the hook.
Yeah. So this is the Spider-Man No Way Home official trailer.
Or trailer 2 technically, but that would require studios to be able to differentiate between teasers and trailers anymore, and they can't. So yeah.
Yep. Anyway.
Banana.
No.
Ever since I got bit by that spider, I've only had 1 week where my life has felt normal. That was when you found out.
See, that was a really good moment, and I wish we had more investment into MJ so that it
All right,
mattered more.
right. I will voice my opinions. I'll be right back. I'm putting food away. Like we had dinner and I'm putting it away.
Okay. Yeah.
That won't be long. I'll be back. Voice anything you gotta say about this trailer. Like I know you were gonna say.
I just yeah. If this was with a love interest that we actually had more connection to or more setup with, it would mean a lot more than it does now. Not faulting Tom Holland at all. It's just that the way that the MCU Spider-Man has been set up, even though we've had Michelle Jones as a friend for a long time, they really haven't really done much with, or they haven't really done much with them as a romantic couple, and therefore we're not fully invested in their dynamic as characters, in the romantic sense. But this is still a really good moment as far as something that Peter Parker would say in basically any universe. Like this is something I could see being said by Toby to MJ or Andrew to his version of Gwen too. So that this works as a Spider-Man moment. It falls a little bit flat because the MJ we've gotten in the MCU so far has been a friend, not really a romantic interest, and so it falls just the tiniest bit flat. But putting it in the context of everything we know about Spider-Man from every other iteration of Spider-Man, this feels very much like the kind of moment that MJ and Mary Jane and Tobey Maguire's would have had, or Andrew Garfield's and his version of Gwen Stacy's would have had, which works. And it is a very Spider-Man centric moment, which is something that's been very light in the MCU Spider-Man up until this point, is they don't really focus too much on Spider-Man's character, which I feel weird because, again, I think Brainstormer might have rubbed off on me a little bit with his love of the character again. We'll get into my issues with the trailer as we get into the Doctor Strange portions of it. Which I'm glad that Doctor Strange is actually going to be throughout the majority of the movie, like it's going to be a buddy movie. I was really worried they were just going to turn him into a glorified cameo, and it seems like they're going to have him be there throughout the majority of the movie, which is good, especially because the relationship between Doctor Strange and Spider-Man is one of the best crossover relationships ever, and one of the earliest as well, because they were some of the first crossovers Marvel actually did when they established an interconnected universe, which always works because Spider-Man is always very grounded and very street level, and Doctor Strange is always very grandiose and mystical and cosmic and whatnot. And of course, Spidey is always the fast-talking joke machine, and Doctor Strange is always the straight man of can we please get serious?
A lot of stuff to put away.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I feel nothing for these first 20 seconds.
That's a bad sign.
And it's not the fault of the actor, of the cast, because they're trying, but the problem is, again, and I'm always going to say this, the same thing I say with Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck, when they played Superman and Batman, respectively.
They're not given anything to work with.
No, they're not.
I don't know if you heard my summation of how I feel about it, but I feel like if this were Tobey Maguire and Mary Jane or Andrew Garfield and Gwen Stacy, this moment would hit a lot more. But because the MJ of the MCU is more of a friend than a love interest, it doesn't really fit well. with him,
I got
even though it's some of Tom Holland's best work as a character, I think.
Yeah, okay, so a few things. And my interest in the MCU, kind of bringing it back to like the whole first arc we did,
Mm-hmm.
my interest started waning when Far From Home came out.
Mm.
And I've made my opinions on that very clear
on
a few streams.
Yeah, it is documented. Everyone can go and look for themselves in the playlist.
I don't know which one it is. It's been a while, but
yeah. But one of the great things about doing all these conversations on live streams is you can literally be like, "Nope, it's been recorded." So if anyone ever tries to call you out on things, it can be like, "Actually, I've been saying this for 2 years because I have the footage."
Right. Yeah. My problem is, well, like what you said, is like, yeah, the relationship isn't really built up as much as I would like.
Mm-hmm. Like we don't get the sense as to why this version of Spider-Man, or why this version of MJ matters to this version of Peter. We know that Spider-Man matters to, or that MJ matters to Spider-Man in general because we had Kirsten Dunst in the Tobey Maguire movies, and we had whoever was playing Gwen in the Andrew Garfield ones. And if you interpret it with that kind of subtext of this is supposed to be a version of Spider-Man and this is his version of MJ, that makes sense. But in the actual content of the movies, we've only seen them develop a friendship. And honestly, I kind of feel bad for Ned now because Ned was the first person he told, or that he was forced to tell because he caught him sneaking through a window.
Yeah,
but
it's and like
their friendship has actually been more of a central point of the franchise to this point than his friendship with MJ. So I feel like Ned is somewhat chopped liver now because I guess his best friend doesn't matter to him.
Yeah, I also want to bring up. Damn it, I had something. Fuck.
Mm.
Again, I don't feel anything because these characters haven't spent enough time together to really get a feel for anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the problem with like these MCU Spider-Man movies. Is always more often than not, it's the villains who get more fleshed out and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They get more time to really breathe and.
Yeah,
stuff.
Vulture was more interesting than him in the first movie, and then Mysterio was more interesting than him in Far From Home.
Yeah, and it's weird.
Yeah.
And it just feels like Spider-Man's there for the plot. Just the plot. No character development or anything.
Yeah, it's we have Spider-Man, so let's use him in a movie. Kind of thing. And again, I like Doctor Strange being here and being kind of the buddy cop aspect of it, because if you're gonna do a buddy cop superhero crossover type movie, using Doctor Strange and Spider-Man is an established, like they have an established dynamic that I've always wanted to see in the movies. So I like that this works. It's just, as we'll get into, I think the movie is trying to frame Doctor Strange as the bad guy, and I'm sorry, but no. Anyway, Banana, we'll get into that probably in this next scene.
Yeah.
When you botched that spell where you wanted everyone to forget that Peter Parker's Spider-Man, we started getting some visitors. From every universe.
I got nothing to say. It's actually not bad. It's not bad right there.
Yeah, it works. And again, I like seeing Spider-Man and Doctor Strange play off each other. It is one of my favorite crossover dynamics, and I'm glad they didn't do to Doctor Strange what they did to Cap and what they kind of did to Tony. I'm glad that they're actually having Doctor Strange be a ongoing contributor to this movie. It honestly, based on the plot spoilers for Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, it honestly feels like there's gonna end up being more Doctor Strange in No Way Home than there is in his own movie, which I hope to God they're fixing in the reshoots. Because Doctor Strange should be the main character in a Doctor Strange movie. And Spider-Man does feel, even though, like I said, I think there's more Doctor Strange here than there is in his own movie, this does still feel like a Spider-Man movie, especially given that we're going to be getting 3-ish iterations of them eventually, which we are definitely getting. You can see in certain parts of the trailer where they've definitely cut out Toby and Andrew. So,
which I don't get. You know,
they want to keep it a surprise, even though everyone already knows. For some godforsaken reason.
Jesus. I don't know. I'm stopped guessing the stupidity of trailer makers.
And the of late stupidity of Marvel. Yeah. Moving on. Banana.
Hello, Peter. You're not Peter Parker.
I'm sorry, what was your name again?
Dr. Otto Octavius.
I hate this joke.
It's not even done yet.
Anyway, yeah, let's let him finish the joke, and then I'll rant about why it doesn't work.
Oh, I got things to say about this too, man. So.
Okay. Yeah. Banana.
Wait, no, seriously, what's your actual name?
There are others out there.
No, wait. No, yeah, let me just play the whole, like, because. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
Like, never mind. Just, okay, so. One thing, okay, so. I feel like you'll be more coherent with your thoughts, and I'm more. Yeah, may I just go first? Because I feel like yours will be better.
Yes, go ahead.
This is where, like, it kind of turned me off for the trailer. Is because Dr. Octopus is kind of one of those big villains for Spider-Man overall.
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, this is somewhat the same version from Spider-Man 2, who was one of the best parts of that movie.
Yeah. It was more of a Dr. Octopus movie than it was a Spider-Man movie, honestly.
You know what, never mind. I don't want to get into a discussion about that.
Okay.
Well, it's just I don't want to get
or at least that's how I felt. I'll say that.
Yeah. But that's just showing kind of blatant disrespect. And not to mention, they have literally these are kids that have grown up in a world full of superheroes with a lot of weird fucking names and shit.
Yeah. I mean, Thanos almost destroyed the universe, and yet nobody. I mean, your first thought when everyone learned your identity was, I'm gonna call that wizard guy I know. So don't tell me you haven't cued into the absurdity by now.
Yeah, but also his name, like Otto Octavius, that's a fucking regal ass sounding name.
Yeah, it doesn't sound silly. It sounds like it should be like an aristocrat or something.
Yeah, and that's my big problem is that it's just super stupid.
Yeah, and here's gonna be my problem with it. Not only is it stupid, not only does it not make sense in universe, not only does it stop the movie dead for a joke that doesn't really work, they've done this joke already in Infinity War. When Doctor Strange first introduced himself as Doctor Strange, and Peter thought that, oh, we're using our made-up names. Never mind the fact that most of the heroes in the Marvel Universe don't even have secret identities or made up names. In fact, Peter, you're kind of the only one that does have a secret identity or made up name after Iron Man 2 at least. And what's more, you know for a fact, Peter, that the Avengers and the superheroes and all the rest call each other by their civilian names all the time. Like everyone refers to Black Widow as Natasha. Everyone refers to Iron Man as Tony. Even you call him Mr. Stark. So why would you first of all, why would you assume that anyone but you has a made up name? And number two, even if I allow for the Doctor Strange is kind of silly sounding, so it might very well be a made up name. You used that joke once already in Infinity War, you don't get to use it again here.
Yeah, and plus, like earlier, we saw Peter fighting Doc Ock, and it seemed like he was really a threat. Now this is kind of
Peter was getting his ass handed to him very, very handily there. And to be fair, Doc Ock has experience, so yeah, he's handing Peter his ass. And yet you're going to laugh at the guy because he happens to be in a cage for 5 seconds.
Yeah,
hope this doesn't completely turn you into mincemeat later when he gets out of the cage, because he probably will. And
anyway,
banana.
Yeah.
There are others out there. We need to send them back. So, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You know, all this is kind of your mess. I know a couple magic words myself, starting with the word please.
Please, Scooby-Doo this crap.
You're flying out.
Okay.
Yeah, I got.
Bitch, please. At what point is this Doctor Strange's fault? Okay, let's review, because I know I'm the world's biggest simp for Doctor Strange, but even if I'm taking that out of it, this makes no fucking sense. Bitch, Peter came to Doctor Strange and asked him to perform that spell. Granted, Doctor Strange should have said no.
Yeah.
But given that he said yes, because I assume he thought he could handle it, or he probably assumed that Peter would stay back and let him actually do the work, to actually finish the working before anything like that. But Peter did not ask any questions about how this spell would actually function before Doctor Strange started casting it, and then violated the sanctity of a ritual circle while he was in the middle of casting it, and meddled with some runes that he couldn't even read to try and fix the spell. And you do not, under any circumstances, and this is, me speaking as both a Doctor Strange fan and a practicing occultist myself, you do not mess with anyone when they're in the middle of a ritual circle, you moron. And what's more, if you do not get to turn around, MJ, and say, this is your problem, because he was asked to perform this spell. He was not respected while he was performing the spell, and the spell was messed up, not by Doctor Strange being distracted even, but by Peter monkeying around with the language of the spell.
Right.
So you do not get to pull the say please shit on Doctor Strange right now. Doctor Strange is the one cleaning up your mess. And honestly, if it weren't for the fact that Doctor Strange is Doctor Strange, and therefore, his whole career is basically make sure the universe doesn't come to a fucking end. If it were me in this situation that you had asked to do this shit, I would have walked away and said, you know what, just for that, sort this out yourself, since you think you can do it so much better, and portaled to another dimension.
To be fair, Dalton, you are a petty bitch.
Yes, I am an asshole, and that's why I should not be in a Sorcerer Supreme position. But if it weren't for the fact that Doctor Strange is Doctor Strange and he knows the consequences of his actions well enough to know he shouldn't do that, that's how a normal human being responds to this shit. You asked him to do something. You didn't ask enough questions. After the fact to, get the actual. You didn't ask any questions. You just let him go about doing it. And then while he was in the middle of doing it, you violated his ritual circle. You manipulated spell language that you can't even read. And then you blame him for casting it, given that he was doing you a favor and it was your fault that it was messed up. And this is the thing though. If Doctor Strange had gotten distracted and was distracted by Peter or whatever, and didn't do the spell right, then maybe you'd have a point. But here's the thing. From what we see in the trailer, at least, it is not Doctor Strange messing with the spell. It's not him messing up the spell that is the problem. The spell would have gone off without a hitch if Peter hadn't meddled. But Peter meddled, and so now, essentially, my message to you, Michelle, is you do not get to bite the hand that feeds you. You do not get to bitch at the guy trying to pull your ass out of the fire for messing up the spell when you asked for it and it was you who messed it up.
Right.
You ignorant bitch.
Okay.
Yeah, moving on.
Why I had some things to say myself.
Okay, go ahead.
Regarding Michelle.
Yeah.
This is why I hate this character. And this is why I hate the writing in these movies that sucks so much. Because these characters are fucking dumbass assholes that cannot take responsibility for their own fucking actions.
And they feel entitled to correct the one person in the room who's trying to pull their
right. And I'm sorry, no. I'm sorry, Don. You did have your piece.
Yeah, go ahead. It's fine.
My biggest, and there's no consequences. Like, even this, I don't think there's going to be any fucking consequences to this movie. That's my biggest problem with Spider-Man, with this version of Spider-Man, is that there's no fucking consequences.
No,
he makes. Okay, because that's the thing with Spider-Man, is the responsibility that causes a lot of his fucking problems, because there are consequences to every action he takes. Even if he does the right thing, which is help people.
There's still consequences because nothing ever goes off without a hitch. And like I said, if Doctor Strange weren't Doctor Strange right now, if this were in the DC universe, then you would ask John Constantine to help you rather than Doctor Strange. He probably would have pieced out after that bullshit and just been like, you know what? If you think you're so smart, why don't you try to solve this yourself? Oh wait, you can't because you need me. Well, how about you remember that the next time before you mouth off to someone who, in Doctor Strange's case, has several decades of being a world-renowned neurosurgeon, has at least 7 years now of being, a high-level master of the mystic arts. I don't think he's the Sorcerer Supreme yet, but in any case.
Well, I mean, if you also do, if you do count the years he spent.
Yeah, if you count the years he spent fighting Dormammu, he's been doing this for more than 30,000 years, and and especially if you count the Thanos time loop, he's been doing this for thousands of years now. If we're taking the time loops into account,
so he's technically how long does it take to be a fucking Sorcerer Supreme then?
In the Marvel universe, there's an actual test to determine who the Sorcerer Supreme is. Basically, what happens is every, I want to say 500 years, the Vishanti, who are the three godlike entities that the Sorcerer or that Doctor Strange and the Ancient One draw their powers from, call a meeting of basically all the the highest level magic users in the world, and whoever manages to defeat the test that they think up for it is the Sorcerer Supreme. And we haven't even seen the Vishanti yet, so I'm not even sure how that works in the MCU.
They've been referenced many times, so you'd expect them to show up at some point.
Well, my biggest thing is the majority of WandaVision was set up for the Darkhold. So if the Darkhold exists in the MCU, then that means the Book of Vishanti also exists in the MCU, because the backstory of the Darkhold is in ancient prehistoric times, the world was ruled by sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just like again,
Yeah.
we gotta get with this stuff.
Yeah. Long story short, the Darkhold is connected to the light side equivalent of it, called the Book of the Vishanti, that was written by the Vishanti. And if the Darkhold exists, then the Book of the Vishanti also exists. That's the short version. Moving on.
I do want to say this though. The image I stopped on here with like the mystical armor Spider-Man,
Yeah.
I like, but I doubt it's really going to be anything important.
No, I imagine it will matter at least a little bit, because we've already got that set up in What If with Eldritch terror infested Doctor Strange. He used similar protection spell armor on Thor, T'Challa, and Captain Carter when they were fighting Ultron. So I assume that's kind of what they're going for there.
Fair enough. And also, comparatively to the MCU version of Doctor Strange, I will say Strange Supreme seems more like a Doctor Strange.
Yeah, and this is where I always end up losing my freaking mind, because they actually did the arc of Doctor Strange better in the alternate universe What If than they did in his own freaking movie. And they didn't even do the losing his hands thing in the alternate universe. So now the best version of Doctor Strange in the MCU, or MCU adjacent, doesn't even have the backstory that Doctor Strange is supposed to have. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Anyway, banana.
Banana.
You're flying out into the darkness to fight ghosts.
What do you mean?
They all die fighting Spider-Man. It's their fate. I'm sorry, kid.
Yeah, me too.
Don't.
Peter, you ignorant slut. Even after the bullshit that MJ just pulled, Doctor Strange is still trying to help you.
I got a few things. I feel like no offense, but I do feel like you're just
no. Go ahead, go. It's fine.
I mean, first thing, I don't necessarily agree with what Doctor Strange says about their fate to die by Spider-Man, because most of them die by their own accord.
Well, yeah, but they're in the process of fighting Spider-Man, I think is what he means.
Fair enough. He did say that, and okay, so I correct my previous statement, but still. And yeah, I agree with like the whole Peter being a dumbass, but granted, again, I get what
he doesn't want anyone to die as a result of his actions, which is fine.
Right, but also like I remember seeing someone tweet about this. Is like we're finally getting Peter having to make a choice, or like deal with something. And honestly, I don't really see it. To be fair, this feels really stupid and forced.
Yeah, and now Doctor Strange has to act like the bad guy because reasons. Even though all he's saying is, if we send these people home, they're going to die by an alternate version of Spider-Man's hands, which or in the process of fighting other versions of you. So as far as you know, Peter, that doesn't even mean you kill them or that an alternate version of you kills them. It just means that when they get home, they have to die. And for some reason, Peter is seeing this not only as a like unstoppable, he's seeing this as though it's something horrible that he personally is responsible for, but he mouths off and apparently goes into straight up opposition with Doctor Strange, who is literally the only person in the world, in your world at least, who is capable of helping you right now. And he's still trying to be gentle about it. And you're going to be a prick the entire time because you don't want anyone to die based on the choices of someone who's like you. Well, Peter, number one, you don't even know that you kill them personally. Number two, the only person who you have to help you is not the one person you want to piss off. And number three, even if it was an alternate version of you, that doesn't necessarily make you accountable for it. Unlike the spell you botched, which you take no responsibility for, and in fact, MJ sides with you against Doctor Strange on, and you straight up attack Doctor Strange at one point, and it's just like, of all the stupid bullshit. Moving on.
Yeah, this is modern writing at its finest. That is my problem, but I'll get into that later.
Yeah, it's just like I understand why he feels bad, but like there's so many better ways to handle this. And hell, why don't you have Doctor Strange, who until the point you pissed him off by literally attacking him, probably would have still helped you.
Right.
Look for alternative routes to this.
You know what?
Yeah.
There's something in my brain, like a rewrite idea that I might, as we go on with this trailer, I might be able to talk about it at the end.
Okay. Also, minor quibble. Sandman or Flint Marko didn't die fighting Spider-Man. They made peace at the end of Spider-Man 3.
Dude, that character was so cool. I hate that they had to force Sam Raimi to put Venom in, because
yeah, the dynamic with him and Flint Marko was really, really cool. And the reason I don't want to call him Sandman is because in my head, Sandman will always and forever be Dream of the Endless, or at least that franchise. So
yeah. But dude, oh god, that character was so cool.
Yeah, that was one of the best emotional moments in the franchise when he forgave Flint for what happened.
Dude, I still love the creation of Sandman.
Yeah, it's a really great scene, and it's still one of the most interesting villains that's been introduced to the Raimiverse.
Yeah, dude.
Certainly better than Topher Grace Venom. Jeez, fucking tap dancing Christ.
Yeah, again, the studio forced Sam Raimi to put that character in.
And honestly, what you should have done is just have Flint Marko be the villain for Spider-Man 3 and then introduce Venom in Spider-Man 5, because I know Sam Raimi wanted to do the Vulture for Spider-Man 4, but they could have easily done Venom for Spider-Man 5, and you could have had Peter go slowly darker as the movies go on, so that it gives more of an impact when he has to face down his personal darkness by way of the Venom symbiote.
Shall we?
Yeah, banana.
Banana.
Look, there has to be another way. There isn't. They're a danger to our universe. You're not gonna take this away from me. Peter, you're struggling. Have everything you want.
And here's the problem, and I wish one of them would bring this up. He's not fighting to save people who are supposed to be alive. He's fighting to save people who are, according to the logic of their own internal universes, are already dead and were only saved by the spell that Doctor Strange was forced to botch because Peter kept fucking around with the spell language. So, yeah, Peter, I admire your desire for no one to die by your hand or anyone who's like you's hand, but dude, if you hadn't saved them by botching that spell, they would already be dead. So any time they spend in your universe is time they already wouldn't have had. So you've already done right by them by giving them extra time that they wouldn't have had.
Although, I mean, unless you can give me an explanation on this, Doctor Strange in his first movie, his only movie, You know, he took the Hippocratic Oath, and he felt very much remorse when he killed that man. You know, one of the acolytes.
Yeah.
And now he's here, and like I get it because like they're not of this universe and stuff, but still,
Yeah,
it's
I
so,
don't. It doesn't quite gel with his arc so far. But I think what he's getting at is Peter needs to let it go, much in the same way as he needed to let the Time Stone go in Infinity War. Like, because in Doctor Strange's mind, the mess has already been made when the universes started intersecting to begin with. So, and also, I would imagine Doctor Strange's perspective is it's not like we're killing people who wouldn't have already died. We're only returning them to the lives they already lived. I think is going to be the
yeah.
way around it, which
I
makes
also
sense.
want to say, like, I think you and I had a brief discussion about this on Thursday when we hung out.
Mm-hmm.
I like the look of Electro. Granted,
Yeah,
it seems
it was nice seeing a more comic accurate Electro.
yeah, it's more mechanical looking. Granted,
Mm-hmm.
it does also look like a mixture of a few things. Personally, I liked Jamie. I think Jamie Foxx would have been a good Electro again. It's just like with a lot of studio interference from the main Spider-Man.
Sony got in their own way with the Andrew Garfield movies a lot of the time.
Yeah,
But I'm glad that he's here because this means that we'll get a version of Electro that's more comics accurate, and it means they're not afraid of retconning the Andrew Garfield ones.
yeah.
Which there's a lot of things in the Andrew Garfield ones that I feel could have been handled better. So if they want to fix them, then fine.
And here we have Green Goblin. It looks primarily CGI for this suit. And again, you and I had a discussion about this with the Sam Raimi costume. It's very 2000s, obviously.
Yeah.
And hopefully they do a change with it. Like, honestly, the design itself is not bad. I just wish they added more of the Green Goblin standard colors to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
And
the purple.
I think all the characters are getting upgrades throughout the movie because, like, for example, Doc's tentacle or arms look different than they did,
Yeah,
and um Electro's
more
Electro
mechanical and
yeah
yellow.
Electro got a costume change, so I
Yeah,
assume that eventually we'll get a Goblin costume change too. They I bet they just threw this in here to, you know, make sure everyone knew, yes, these are the same characters as before.
yeah, that's fine. Like, I get that. It's
Like they'll show up as they usually are, and then later on they'll get upgrades.
Doc already looks different. Like the hairstyle and the clothing, it looks very different.
Hmm. But we also don't know where the scenes we're seeing in the trailer are in terms of the movie, so this might be after.
But again, like my thing, like here's what I'm guessing is that these are slightly, obviously not like mainline.
Yeah, these are within the context of an alternate universe that
With
may have actually been created by the spell.
yeah,
Really
which
interesting.
honestly would be pretty cool in my opinion.
Yeah. And I expect we'll also see Tom Hardy's Venom because with how Venom 2
Ended.
post-credit scene worked, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Shall we?
Yep, banana.
Banana.
While the world tries to make you choose. This is all my fault. I can't save everyone.
And they're doing the Gwen moment again, because of
Yeah.
course. My question is, are they gonna actually let it happen and have Peter have to deal with that, or are they gonna have him save her, or are they gonna have somebody, or one of the other Spider-Men gonna save her?
Yeah. Again, I could not care less, just because that's how much this franchise has kind of, beating me down.
Yeah, it disappointed you. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just hope that it either turns out that this Doctor Strange isn't the real Doctor Strange and it's Wanda under glamour like I said I wanted, or eventually they're gonna reveal eventually they're gonna reveal that Doctor Strange was the one in the right, because everything that the Spider Gang has done or said to him so far has been really just flippant, ignorant, and stupid, and I hate it. So
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, banana.
banana.
What's happening? They're starting to come through. I can't stop them. December 17th, exclusively at movie theaters.
Okay. I got nothing to say unless you have a theory on who's coming, Dalton.
I don't know what they. I'm I want to say that characters like Shimmegorath and Kithan and things like that will come through the multiverse because that makes sense. But knowing what we know about the possible leaks of Doctor Strange 2, it doesn't really seem like they're planning on actually making use of any of the Lovecraftian creatures in the Doctor Strange mythos or anything, or even the Gothic characters they need to set up for like Moon Knight and things like that and Blade. So I expect this is going to be disappointing for me because they're probably just gonna bring in a bunch of this. They're probably just gonna bring Chris Evans back and have him play an alternate version of Captain America, or bring Haley Atwell back as Captain Carter and yada yada yada. And I don't I don't I don't like. I have nothing left to look forward to if you don't actually use this to do some Doctor Strange related stuff. Or maybe this is where Andrew and Peter, or where Andrew and Toby will show up. I don't know.
Right. Okay. So this is more an off the cusp kind of rewrite pitch deal.
Yeah.
Granted, I already did my own kind of rewrite / pitch trilogy of the MCU Spider-Man. Check that out on my other channel, Brainstorm Pop Culture. Okay, so, and I won't lie, I'm taking some ideas I had seen someone had pitched like a theory of, called Brown Tabor. He's a video essayist. Cool dude.
Mm.
Kind of boring sometimes, but that's really with anyone. Like I said, I'm just going to give broad strokes. I'm not going to go super in depth with it as much as I would like to. Okay, so, well, first off, like pretty much like how I guess the first act, or even like the inciting incident, which would be like the opening, I guess. Because I feel like the problem is that they're going to kind of wait a bit to do the whole spell thing, like just to build everything up.
Yeah, they're gonna build up how Peter's life has been impacted, or how Aunt May, or how everybody's he knows lives have been impacted by.
My problem with that is that it's going to drag on. Like there's a quick and easy way to do that. So honestly, I kind of just montage. You can do a montage.
Yeah. I don't know what it is with movies today and refusing to ever do montages ever.
Yeah, it's weird. Like sometimes, like again, sometimes you don't need to do a montage, but like it's helpful.
Yeah. In the same way that in Doctor Strange 2016 would have been really helpful to have a montage of after the Ancient One rejects him, he goes back like day after day after day, and after, I don't know, however many months or however many years, she finally says, okay, fine. Rather than just like in the movie it makes it seem like it's the day after. Like he just stayed outside of her enclave one night and then she acquiesced, which is lame.
Honestly, I would have just made it a month, to be fair. Like, I feel like if we did years.
Right, it would muck up the timeline a little bit, but
Yeah.
something to demonstrate that Doctor Strange has a stick-to-itiveness, especially when you consider that the movie ends with basically what amounts to a montage of him being stubborn and not giving up even though he's in pain. So it would have been a really nice full circle thing if the first plot of the first difficulty he faces in the movie when he gets to Kamar-Taj is he has to be patient and he has to be stubborn enough to beat his head against the wall.
Okay.
Again.
All right. So montage of how Peter's life's changed, and then 30 minutes into the movie, he goes to Doctor Strange, asks for the spell, yada yada.
Rest of it's history, and then on we move. Yeah.
Okay, so this is where like it starts to change. And again, I'm taking some ideas from another YouTuber. I don't claim these as my own ideas. I didn't come up with them myself. Is that yes, these are alternate versions of the villains we know, obviously. And the idea that I saw that I really liked was that these are villains that have killed Spider-Man. Killed their version of Spider-Man. You know?
That'd be interesting. Like a version of Spider-Man 1 where Goblin won, or a version of Spider-Man 2 where
fan animation.
won.
Yeah, there's like a fan animation that did that where like Peter gets impaled by the glider. It's disturbing and dark.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to pull from.
Yeah. And like obviously like these are villains that let's say that they're coming from the present time in their dimension, which would be like 2021, right? And let's say the timeline of those
is fairly consistent, yeah.
Yeah, those movies. So these are villains that have been villains for years.
And that won a long time ago.
Yeah, and have advanced their gear, know how to use their powers, even more so than Spider-Man, who has only been like Spider-Man for maybe 4 or so years now. Like this Spider-Man, at least, right? And yeah, and like we are getting the Sinister Six. That's clearly obvious.
Yeah.
So
I mean, Doc Ock, Goblin,
Sandman,
Electro,
Lizard.
I think we see the Lizard at one point, and probably Venom.
Not for this one, I don't think. I think something. I'm sorry, I'm trying to think. I mean, there was a Rhino in Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yeah.
Maybe that.
Maybe.
And again, to reiterate, these villains have killed their versions of Spider-Man, have been villains for a long time, upgraded, better trained, better skilled, and now have to work together to kill this Spider-Man and stuff. All that. And you have personality clashes with the villains, because I think that's interesting. And if we're doing alternate versions, clearly Spider-Man 2, not just with the actors, obviously, but kind of, again, alternate takes. Like, even I would love to see, like, maybe redesigns of the costumes to both be homages to the original costumes that the actors wore, but also different takes, because, again, these are different versions of the Spider-Man we knew.
Yeah.
Like, personally, I totally see Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, maybe not being a Spider-Man from the 2000s, but more like an original Spider-Man, like from the '60s.
That'd be neat.
Yeah. If I could, I would pull up a picture of a design for a 1960s Spider-Man costume.
Mm.
And Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man's a little harder because I honestly would love him to keep like the original Spider-Man costume from the first Amazing Spider-Man, maybe a little more upgraded in a way, maybe a little more tech-based, maybe like something similar to Spider-Man Unlimited, if anyone remembers that cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
I like that cartoon, by the way. It's a good one. But these are like older, more experienced Peter Parkers that have defeated their villains, done things, and can teach this new Spider-Man and stuff. You know, again, it's very much like a Spider-Verse thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember people always thinking like this theory, and I thought it would be really cool too, is if Tobey Maguire was the Uncle Ben of the MCU.
Either Tobey Maguire or guy who voiced him in the Spider-Man animated series.
90s one, right?
Something Daniel Brown, I think.
Hold on. Let me look it up.
Christopher Daniel Barnes, is that it?
Hold on. Looking it up. But yeah, and yeah, effectively it is the same plot, more or less, but with just like added things of like, oh, these, you know, just more moments of like
Yeah, like imagine if when Tom Holland Spider-Man meets Peter Parker Spider-Man, at first he thinks it's
Peter Parker Spider-Man,
or sorry, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. When the MCU's Peter meets the the Raimi-verse Peter, he first thinks it's his Uncle Ben because they're the same actor. That would be interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, you still hunting for the image, or are we moving forward?
I'm looking for the guy you're talking about. Just so, yeah, Christopher Daniel Barnes.
Yeah, that'd be interesting.
Yeah. But yeah, that's just like if we're going alternate takes, like alternate dimensions of these characters, have fun with it. Because they seem to be having fun with the villains. Maybe do that with the Spider-Man. Like honestly, what would be interesting if we got a Spider-Man, like the Uncle Ben Spider-Man from the Spider-Verse comics, that costume,
Mm-hmm.
or like the Spider-Man Last Stand costume. I mean, if you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Or if we're gonna have Spider-Man and Doctor Strange crossing over in this one, it'd be interesting to see a version of Spider-Man who, instead of being taken under the wing of Tony Stark, was taken under the wing of Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
And they've done Spider Supreme in the comics a couple of times, so you could easily do that. Have him, have a version of Spider-Man showing up wearing the Cloak of Levitation, for example. That'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so are we moving forward?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So this is one that Dawn wanted to cover. I sent this to him.
Mm-hmm.
The Nightmare Alley official trailer.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, Guillermo del Toro knows how to do teaser trailers and regular trailers.
Mm. Well,
Anyway,
Guillermo del Toro is one of the greatest people in Hollywood working today.
fair enough. Banana.
I'll ask you simple questions. You will answer in short sentences only what you believe to be absolute truth. Absolute truth. I can do that.
Already off the bat, great tone.
I'd have gone on a slightly different route with it, but I'm fine with this. I don't know why they're going the thriller route rather than the Carney route or the pulp detective route. Granted, I've read the or I've skimmed over the actual source material for this, so I know where they're going with it and why. But it's just I hope it's just a matter of they're saving the best parts of the movie for the movie, and they're just kind of trying. I feel like this trailer was made for normies who don't really get Guillermo del Toro, but that's not a bad route, I guess. Moving on.
I don't know.
Now, brief as you can. What is your name? Stanton Carlisle. Are you a true medium? Yes, I am.
Mr. Carlisle,
Doctor, how about that?
please lie down.
I just love the production of this.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
Guillermo
Guillermo del Toro is the master of production design, so yeah.
It's it's just me. Like, I like Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, he's good at everything he does. So I'm not complaining. I just think the trailer editors might not have known what they were doing. I think they're trying to sell a different movie than the one that's actually being made.
Shall we?
Yeah, banana.
Banana.
Can you read minds? Yes, I can. Under the right circumstances. Keep the answers brief.
What do I want?
To be found out, same as everybody else. Are you in contact with the Beyond?
Well, we've had our share of snake charmers in the past. We deal with them.
I'm the same.
I'm curious. Again, I'm knowing the source material after the first trailer came out and needing to understand where they're going with it. This movie is the perfect this source material is the perfect source material for Guillermo del Toro. So I'm interested in. I just want to watch him adapt it, to be honest with you, because okay, the source material for this for this movie basically boils down to down on his luck character finds his way to a carnival sideshow and ends up getting trained by the local or by the circus's tarot reader / mentalist / mind reader / whatever, and he and she end up basically becoming famous mediums by way of faking it using mentalism. And then it turns out there actually might be some legitimate stuff to this, but obviously as things go by, it becomes harder and harder to tell the difference between what they're faking and what's legitimate. And meanwhile, you have a bunch of skeptics trying to debunk them because essentially they started out ripping people off, but as things go by and by and by, it becomes a story of if they ever stop doing what they're doing, they'll both be essentially dirt poor, and it's a bit complicated. I'll have to stop summarizing because it's a bit complicated. But yeah, rest assured, this is the perfect source material for Guillermo del Toro. I think the problem here is mostly the way the trailer is being edited, because it's being edited like an action movie, when it should be one of those movies that slowly builds you into the world rather than tries to make it a thriller. So yeah, if this movie doesn't do well, I'll blame it on the trailer editors. But the problem is the first trailer was actually really good. This one just is off. But anyway, moving on. Banana. Brainstormer.
You don't fool people, Stan. They fool themselves.
I've given you a fortune. It's time that you delivered.
When does it end? I want to know.
Sorry, I was coughing, so I didn't want to
Yeah, no, it's fine. Again, there's a lot of layers to this story, and I can see the bits of it that I remember from reading the synopses and stuff. I just judging by the original thumbnail of this video, I'm assuming that Guillermo del Toro did bring the kind of turn of the century carny vibe to it, and they're just editing around it for some reason. But yeah, the trailer might not be good, but I have faith in the source material, and I have faith in Guillermo del Toro, so it'll probably be good anyway. Banana.
One sec.
If you displease the right people, the world closes in on you very, very fast.
Yeah, I really hope that this is good. Anyway, next. Brainstormer is presumably coughing again, so we'll wait.
No, I was setting up the next trailer.
Aha.
Give me 1 sec. Yeah, so now we will be talking about select few things of the D23
Disney Plus Day. Bless you.
Okay. First one is Marvel Studios' Ms. Marvel. And Ms. Marvel is in Kamala Khan, not Carol Danvers.
Yeah. Even though they honestly probably should have taken more influence from Miss Marvel than the Kelly Sue DeConnick run.
Yeah. Sorry, but that sneeze shook like my bones and shit. Alright. It's only 20 seconds actually, so.
Yep.
Hold on, does it? No, it's auto generated. Okay. Anyway. Banana?
Yeah.
Kamala, let's talk about you.
It's not really the brown girls from Jersey City who save the world.
Maybe now they do.
I got this, right?
Totally.
That was weak as shit.
Yeah, it gave basically nothing.
Right. Okay. The thing is, like, to be fair, we might be a little biased because I don't think you or I are really big fans of Kamala Khan.
No, not really. I know it's not for any of the diversity reasons. It's because they never really seemed to know what to do with the character, and when they did figure out something to do with the character, it didn't really work.
Yeah. Personally, I came up with an idea, but I never really posted or talked about it about how to do that character.
Mm.
Because they made her an Inhuman, I think. Honestly, it's never really clear.
Mm-hmm.
Make her a mutant in the X-Men and have her, like, granted that over time, that takes time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you were going to make her a Miss Marvel, which I would have been fine with if you would build up the character a bit,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And plus, like, again, like, it's just, there's nothing in here that really interests me. There's nothing.
Granted, it is just a first look, so they might not
Fair,
have
but still,
much footage to work with, but still.
fair, but still, like,
Yeah.
there's
It's
no.
like it's like I always say with the first trailer for anything. If you're not ready to produce your first trailer, then save it for when you are ready. Rather than producing something that has none of the actual content of the thing in it. The purpose of the trailer is to sell what you're selling, so if you don't have any money shots in your trailer, then wait until you do.
Yeah, like, well, also, it didn't have any style to it. Like, even with a teaser, with some basic footage you could add some style, but no, it feels very generic as well.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, it's not its own thing, which is what the MCU Marvels has been so far.
Yeah. So next.
Yeah, I was sorry. I was setting it up.
You're good.
All right, so this is the first look at Marvel Studios' She-Hulk. Okay, so full disclosure, I am not the biggest fan. Well, okay, no, let me rephrase that. I'm not as knowledgeable as She-Hulk as I. It's not really a character that's really grabbed me, you know.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, Hulk has never really been a character that grabs me either. Which
No, me either. I, for the most part, I just avoid the Hulks.
well,
With
okay.
the exception of Hulkling, who is adorable and wonderful, and I love him. So
To be fair, there are some interesting Hulks that I like and would like to learn more about. But to be fair, it's only really the Hulks, not really the people that turn into Hulks, because Hulks are their own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, shall we?
We shall.
Banana.
Banana.
I'm Jennifer Walters. I'm a normal lawyer. Well, not that normal.
These transformations are triggered by anger and fear.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Okay, this was much better.
Yeah, okay. Like, at least it had a tone about it.
Yeah.
From what I remember,
she's capable of being funny, which is good for She-Hulk. Because the best version of She-Hulk is the one that was kind of meta-aware about itself.
yeah, breaking
And
forth
embraced how,
Deadpool.
yeah. And they did make her pretty, so that works too.
Yeah.
I was worried they were going to go the new She-Hulk route and just turn her into a female Hulk.
And hopefully, like, okay, and again, hopefully they take more inspiration from, like, the classic sensational She-Hulk, where,
Yeah.
like, she's more of the, what was the term? The Jade Goddess or Jade Amazon,
Yeah.
where she's more flirt, like the, the Cree Summers from the 90s Hulk series,
Yeah.
where she's, like, super flirty, super confident and stuff.
Yeah, she's a super model, basically.
Yep. Actually, I remember seeing in, like, the actual, like, whole Disney Plus thing where, like, they showed, like, tiny previews for everything.
Mm-hmm.
There was a look of a tall green lady stepping out of a limo in, like, a dress at, like, a runway deal, like, like
Yeah.
a corporate scenario.
Which does seem very She-Hulk to me, so yeah. But yeah, Jennifer Walters, when she's done right, can give Wonder Woman a run for her money in just sheer likability, so I hope they do it right.
Yes, I was setting up the last one. This is one I think you and I can both agree. This is the one we're most excited for and interested in.
Moon Knight.
Yep.
If we were talking about the Agatha spinoff, we would be talking about that, but they didn't give us anything other than a first look for that. So.
Title.
Yeah.
Uh,
Which honestly, they really should have just called it Agatha all along. Everyone loves that fucking theme song. Everyone.
Anyway, shall we?
Banana.
Banana.
I can't tell the difference between my waking life and dreams.
The voice in your head.
Okay, this one might be the best out of the teasers.
Yeah, I agree. I like that they are going for the like mentally fractured route because it's a very key feature of Moon Knight.
Yeah.
I just hope they don't try to do just that and like lampshade Khonshu because Moon Knight is a very weird character even by my standards.
Yeah.
Because he's both a, let's not beat around the bush. He's basically schizophrenic. He has a fractured sense of self and a fractured sense of personality. But he's also the avatar of the ancient Egyptian moon god Khonshu. So I hope they do both aspects of this justice, but it's easier to sell the schizophrenic side of things, I think, for in a first look. So hopefully we'll get the weird mystical moon mojo later on. So.
Right, and also here's the thing. Well, one thing, I love the tone, and this looks, for some reason, this looks more cinematic than the other two. Like, she was that a bit, but this looks like a legit movie.
Yeah. It's almost Marvel's answer to Joker if they do it right.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just a really engaging tone to it, you know?
Yeah, and again, not to mention everything else, but if they do this right, it'll be a perfect jumping off point for Blade and Doctor Strange 2 or 3 and basically all the other mystical characters. Because you could easily have Khonshu the Living Mummy show up here or Werewolf by Night show up here, and it would make perfect sense. So,
well, to be fair, Moon Knight showed up in Werewolf by Night first.
Yeah, so it would makes sense, and it would let things come full circle if Werewolf by Night first showed up in Moon Knight.
Yeah.
But that would require Marvel knowing what they're doing. But at the very least, I hope this show is good.
Yeah.
Even if they don't use it to the fullestness of its potential.
Right. Okay. So, a few things before we continue, because there is more to this.
Mm-hmm.
I hope they don't water it down.
Yeah, this basically should be. If anyone remembers the show Legion from a couple of years ago.
Well, what I mean by water it down is the violence, because Moon Knight makes Punisher look like a fucking teddy bear.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason why people who have a connection to the moon are called lunatics, and yeah, they play with that in here, or they do in the comics at least. Because Jesus and Christ,
dude, he cut off one of his arch enemy's faces and wears it sometimes.
Yeah. Because Moon Knight honestly almost comes off Lovecraftian at times with the way Kanju kind of uses I forget Moon Knight's actual name. I believe Mark Spector. Yeah.
How the fuck do you forget like that?
Because Moon Knight has 50 different names because all his different personas have names too.
Fair enough.
But yeah, Mark Spector. It basically ends up getting used by the moon god Khonshu as a puppet, and it's straight up Lovecraftian at times. And I really hope they don't shy away from that here.
Yeah. Then again, this is Marvel, and they tend to streamline. But this is the MCU. I mean, and
I really worry they're just gonna leave Khonshu out, or worse yet, have Khonshu be a hallucination by Mark.
I don't think they'll do that because they don't really shy away from that weird. But again, I'm more worried about how Moon Knight operates.
Yeah, with the obvious the not schizophrenia and the ultra violence.
Yeah, we get a bit of this here right now.
Because that's the other vibe that Moon Knight should kind of have, is the almost like a Clockwork Orange thing. Basically, Alex DeLarge if he was a superhero.
Yeah. No, banana.
Banana.
It devours you.
Okay, there are many levels of badassery here. I just hope Marvel doesn't shortchange them.
Yeah, and I'll be interested to check it out. We might even do a review of it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if it's good, I would like to talk about it.
Yeah, and if they go as bonkers, balls to the wall, weird as it needs to, with both the ultraviolence and the schizophrenia and the mystical adjacent stuff, then this will easily become my favorite Marvel thing ever.
Right.
The thing
is, I don't think they're gonna go super balls to the walls, at least with the first season, if it gets another season.
Maybe not. Maybe in a post-credit scene, or maybe where maybe he's Mark Spector's walking down the street and you see somebody come through a door or something, and it's implied to be Werewolf by Night. That would be a good place to end season 1. But
it's just I don't again with I've seen some of the comics of Moon Knight. They get weird, super weird and trippy. Even that makes stuff that makes even Jack Kirby's stuff look.
Yeah, I mean it's a different kind of weird, because Moon Knight weird gets very, very almost Sandmanish at times, but Yeah, but
right, and also like to keep this thing is like Moon Knight, originally started out as very much a street level vigilante.
yeah, to the point that a lot of people think that he's Marvel's answer to Batman.
Oh, dude, as much as I love Batman, Moon Knight would chew that motherfucker up and spit him out.
Yeah, it's honestly, if he's Marvel's equivalent to anyone, he's Marvel's equivalent to Dr. Fate almost, without the power necessarily. But the way he and Khonshu, the way Mark and Khonshu kind of have to work together and things, that's sort of very much Nebu and Kent's.
Yeah.
Similar.
Yeah.
Another character that would be really smart of you, Marvel, to introduce here, if you wanted to introduce somebody here, would be Juggernaut, because Juggernaut is the avatar of Sycorax in the Sidorak in the same way that Mark Spector is the avatar of Khonshu.
Yeah.
It would make introducing the X-Men characters later a lot easier if you have some of them already able to be here. Plus, it would really set up for Doctor Strange 2, assuming that you rewrite it well enough that it becomes a Doctor Strange movie and not a soft pilot for America Chavez and the X-Men. Assuming.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much the only thing I'm really looking forward to when it comes to Marvel is Moon Knight.
I hope that Spider-Man No Way Home will be good, and I really, 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 really hope that Doctor Strange 2 will be good, but I am not holding my breath anymore.
Anyway, with that, folks, I want to say goodbye, adios, aloha, auf Wiedersehen, sayonara, peace, cheers, and...
Fuck off.